Alright guys, Arbiter here. So a bit of a different video today. I'm basically going to be talking about all of the balance changes that are currently on the test server. So as you guys probably know already, there have been some they have made some drastic changes to the meta. These aren't official yet, but typically when they create something like this, they basically make it go to the live server pretty much unchanged. So 90% of the stuff you see here is probably going to actually happen on the live server. But just to let you guys know, disclaimer, this is not official stuff. Stuff that comes on the live server might be a little bit different, but to give you guys a heads up as free-to-play players, I want to give you guys some information as to what you can expect for the meta change. Hey guys, Arbiter here. I also want to say that I got a lot of help for recording this video. So if you guys don't know, on Reddit, there is a popular user named HappyGamer18777, also known by Nova Shipo and also known as VS by a lot of the people inside the Reddit community. He is a goated player and also my clan leader who creates a lot of guides for robots. I got his feedback for the test server experimentation because I myself didn't play with the gear on the test server. He actually went and tested everything for the most part on the rebalance, and he also gave me his thoughts. So great thank you and shout out to him. Go check him out if you guys haven't already. And I will say that even though this is the work of two people, most of the stuff should be, for the most part, realistic to the player experience. Again, I will say though, disclaimer, since it is only two people's opinions, don't take everything 100% for the word. You guys can see the stuff in game later for yourself, but just expect that most of the changes that we talk about here are going to be pretty much accurate. So with that being said, let's get back to the video. If you guys haven't heard already, this is the Discord server. And if you can see here, so this is the typical test server stuff that they send. And this is the schedule. So currently, as you guys can see, I am recording pretty early in the morning. So the test server won't be on for another couple hours for me. However, they also dropped this massive balance change. And there's a lot of stuff. So as you guys can see here, it's pretty long. What they did was they wrote all that stuff out. Somebody was very kind enough to create a document with all the stuff compiled like this, but I found that some of the numbers were a bit wrong, so I actually went and made my own version of the entire thing. So yeah, this video, basically what we're going to be doing is we're going to be going over every single one of the changes and what you can expect to happen. So I'll be going through both the math and what you can expect as a player in case you don't want to listen to as much of the math as you want. So here are the timestamps for the general sections I will be talking about. Feel free to skip ahead because this video is going to be very long. And then these are going to be the official timestamps for each of the things you want to see a lot more in detail. So pause the video if you want, or just take a look. In 5 seconds, I'm going to be moving on to the next section. All right. And also just a quick thing before we get started. I will say I've also created a tier list. So basically we are going to go from the first section, which is pick tier goated, down to amazing, expected change, nothing changed, a meh change, and we're cooked, as in the thing is just dead. As you guys can see, I have been using the tiermaker.com and I had to manually go and find all these images. So this took a long time to make. If you guys like the video, I would really appreciate if you would leave a like and a subscribe button. So yeah, anyways, enough yap. Let's get into the explanations. So we're starting off here with the Blaze, Igniter, and the Ember. So tier 3 weapons, all right? So I'm actually gonna talk about the overall thoughts for the tier 3 section. So I personally think that the tier 3 weapons got nerfed to a decent amount. I still think a lot of the weapons are going to be meta, and I don't think that a lot of the meta will shift actually. The only weapons that I do think really died are the Hussars family weapons, and pretty much besides that, I think everything else is pretty fine. Okay, so post-Arbiter here. Turns out it's not just the Hussar family that got nerfed to the ground. Hussars are actually going to be somewhat viable still, as long as you go to 450 meter range. But the weapons that did get killed off completely, in my opinion, are the Trickster and Deceiver, the Magnetar, the Puncher, the Regulators, the Reaper, the Flux, and the Avalanche. So do not invest in those weapons. Of course, there's a bunch of weapons there. They're not just tier 3, but I think those are all got killed. And also, I just want to say, I will be making 2 tier lists. So the first tier list is on how good of a change do I think it is by Pixonic. That's the one I showed you earlier. And I'm also going to be giving you guys the second tier list, which is going to be about meta. I can go more in depth into this later in the video. Skip to this timestamp if you want to hear it early. And yeah, hopefully you guys enjoy the video. Back to the content. Weapons did get nerfed pretty solidly, but I don't think any of the weapons are killed, save for the Hussar family. So overall, tier 3 weapons, they got nerfed, yes, but I don't think it's as bad considering everything got nerfed. All right, you guys have to remember, when everything gets nerfed, it's not necessarily a nerf to just your weapon. And because everything is getting nerfed together, things that aren't nerfed are technically, think of it like them getting a buff. So anyways, let's go in through order. So the Blazing Igniter and Ember. Basically, if you guys saw the stats, they said that the Blaze is going from 718 damage per particle to 600, which is a overall nerf of 16.43%. And then, of course, Igniter is this much, so 12%, and then the Ember is 15.5%, all right? And what basically this just means overall damage nerf. You're going to have a lot less damage for your entire clip. Your shot interval is also going to be 40% longer. Basically what this means is now you're going to be firing a lot slower, and this is going to be the overall damage calculations for that. So a bit of a thing if you guys want to keep in mind, the way you calculate damage in this game is you want to multiply your damage times your ammo to get your overall damage per clip, and then you also want to divide your ammo by your shot, you want to multiply your ammo by your shot interval because that's going to give you the time it takes to fully empty your clip. So these are the stats for all the weapons. All right, post-edit Arbiter here. As you guys can see, the numbers themselves didn't change that much. It's just that you're now going to take 6 extra seconds to empty your ammo. So not that significant of a nerf. You're probably not going to notice that big of a change. You'll just see that you have a little bit less damage is all. If we were to rank the flamethrowers, which I kind of need to find them, they're pretty hard to find here. Let's see. There we go. Okay, so we have the flamethrowers. I'm going to be putting them as pretty much nothing changed. I don't think that... Actually, I'll put it as a meta change, honestly. Remember, the way I'm going to put this tier list isn't necessarily damage-wise or meta-wise. I'm just going to rate them as, do I think that the weapon was nerfed well or bad? I'm actually going to add another section here, actually, called OK. So I think actually the flamethrowers are in the OK section. So honestly, not too bad. I still think you can run them perfectly fine. They are weapons that you could run in Champions League. Very good. I don't think they got nerfed too hard. All right, now on the other hand, oh boy, the Hussar family. So as we know, these weapons have been very rampant in Champions League. They are very accurate. They do a lot of damage. As you guys can see here, most of the weapons did get nerfed by around 20 to 25%. In terms of raw damage. You guys can also see the reload interval has decreased, but in exchange, they added this. You might think this is an overall buff because here is the total damage calculations for each of the weapons. You might think that's a buff, but the issue is what this is saying right here. So what dispersion is if you guys don't know, shotguns have dispersion, and I'm sure you guys know where I'm going with this. Dispersion basically means how much your weapon shots will spread. So if we use a comparison here, the Hussars shoot pretty accurately into the center of a dot, but now with this horizontal dispersion and vertical dispersion, we don't know how much it's going to spread by, but you can think of the accuracy going from this circle to this circle. And what that means is when you fire your shots, now your shot can either land here, or here, or here. And it's completely up to luck now. So the reason why I don't like this change at all is not necessarily because of the damage nerf. I actually would have preferred a damage nerf. This means now your damage is up to chance. So if you're unlucky, you could do like barely any damage. And not only that, this is a statistic that Pixonic could technically tinker around with without ever letting the public know. So I think the Hussar family is going to die. Because the reason why these weapons are so dominant is because you can hit people from 600 meter range fairly accurately, right? But now you're probably going to need to go under 450 meter range to actually land your shots consistently. And that's not exactly what you want to be doing with these weapons because you want to keep your distance and keep yourself safe, right? So I personally think I think the Hussar family is we're cooked. I don't like the change at all. I do think that this is going to kill off the weapons playstyle, and I really hope that Pixonic either cancels this buff or buffs these weapons again in the future. Because it's pretty obvious by now that they're only nerfing this because a lot of free-to-play players are using this in Champions League. So yeah, VS actually tested this on the test server, and he says that they only feel a slight bit weaker. So luckily enough, they are not completely dead yet. Anyways, not a fan of that balance change at all. Let's move on to the Avalanche. Okay, I don't see many players running this weapon lately, but I do know it's a pretty good counter to the Teth and the Ultimate Lancelot if you do fight those often. So we are getting a 10% buff overall. I'm rounding here. And then we're also increasing our reload interval by 100%. So what that basically means is you are now going to be taking twice as long to reload your ammo, which is about a 50% nerf in damage. You're also getting this reload threshold nerf. I'm not really sure what this is supposed to mean, but I'm assuming what that means is the weapon will start reloading at 9 ammo instead of 15, I guess. And your ammo capacity has also been decreased from 24 to 10. Okay, so this is a ridiculous nerf. Holy crap. I did the calculations right here on screen. You guys can see the Avalanche has been nerfed ridiculously. I don't know why they did this. I'm assuming it's because, like I said, the Teth and the Ultimate Lancelot are meta bots, and the Avalanche is pretty good at countering those two bots. So I'm assuming the reason why they nerfed Avalanche is to make sure that those bots are stronger. Yeah, this is also, unfortunately, not a very good change by Pixonic. So I found the Avalanche. This is the Avalanche right here. Yeah, I'm putting it under We're Cooked. Also, these aren't going to have any specific order. The categories are just going to be general. So yeah, I think Avalanche is cooked, and I would not recommend investing in them anymore. Alright, so V has confirmed that the Avalanche is dead, and he recommends that you run the Glaciers as a replacement. Very unfortunate nerf by Pix, and I'm not happy they did this. Hopefully they buff it in the future, because the way they've changed this weapon, it's pretty much never going to see the light of day ever again. Alright, let's move on to the next weapon, the Flux. Okay, so as you guys probably know, there is a debate going on between the best sniper weapon for free-to-play players, and it's a contest between Flux, the Prisma, and the Reaper, which I believe are also on this balance change. Piercers are obviously good, but those aren't free to play, so I'm gonna ignore those. But yeah, honestly, I still think Prisma is the best out of all these, especially if you have a maxed out solar drone. But otherwise, I think Flux and Reaper are still pretty good weapons too. But let's see what this balance change is saying. So we're getting a drastic nerf to our damage per particle. That's a near 40% nerf. We are also increasing our reload interval to 3 seconds instead of 1. That basically means you now have a third of the overall DPS, and your burst damage is now going to be what you need to rely on. In exchange, they did increase the ammo capacity, so this is your overall DPS, and this is also going to be the overall damage you do. So as you guys can see, the change isn't as good as you think, and of course, I don't think many players were running Flux over Prismas anyways. But yeah, I'm not a fan of this nerf. I don't think it was necessary. I don't think it's going to kill off the Flux per se, because it is still a good sniper weapon in my opinion. But yeah, I'm going to have to put this in the meh category. Not a fan of it, Pixonic. I don't think you should have done something like this. Alright, so VS tested the Flux and notes that it's dead, so don't bother investing in it anymore. Apparently only Piercers survive the rebalance, so snipers are pretty much dead now as a whole. Very sad picks, very sad. But yeah, let's move on to the next weapon. Not much to talk about for Flux. Alright, the Redeemer. One of my favorite weapons to ever run. I think these are an S tier weapon, even after the nerfs actually. So you guys can see here, the damage per particle was nerfed by about 30%. And obviously the burst interval, which means your firing speed, has been increased by 33%, which means you are now firing slower. There's going to be a bigger delay between your shots. And also your burst duration, you now have 1 extra shot. So the way the Redeemer fires right now is it goes bum, 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 bum. So it fires 4 shots. After this balance change, it's going to be shooting like bum, 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 bum. So 5 shots. And also to accommodate for that, they're also increasing the ammo from 32 to 35. So right now, the way the Redeemer fires is it fires 8 bursts of 4, but now it's going to be firing 7 bursts of 5 shots. So overall, the damage is going to be this now. And of course, we also have this dispersion. So overall, I think the Redeemer is not going to be too affected by this spread because at 350 meter range, you're so close to the enemy that realistically speaking, you're not going to miss a lot of shots. I think the Redeemers will be missing some shots though. So I think you probably want to get closer to like 250 meters, 300 meters to actually hit all your shots consistently. But yeah, I still think Redeemers will be a staple weapon. So I'm actually going to put the Redeemer here. Okay, found the Redeemer. I'm actually going to put the Redeemer in the OK category. So yeah, I don't think that they're going to be bad. I still think like the Flames, you could run them pretty consistently. And I will test this on my main account later on. But yeah, I still think that you can run these in Champions League and they'll still do pretty well. I'd also like to note that VS tested and says the Redeemers thankfully don't feel too much weaker unless you run like 1 or 2 of them. So it looks like these are still one of the go-to weapons to invest in for free-to-play players. So yeah, let's move on to the next weapon category. Redeemers are still going to be pretty good. All right, Shocktrain. So Shocktrain actually got a pretty marginal buff. This basically translates to we did nothing. And in exchange, they decreased the ammo capacity by 20%. They removed a charge. The reload amount has also thus decreased, and your maximum charge has also decreased. So essentially what they did was they essentially nerfed your damage by 25%. That's essentially what this nerf is, right? So actually a 20% nerf. Your overall damage is going to be this. In my opinion, I don't think it's going to impact you too much, but it does mean that the Shocktrain overall will now deal 20 to 25% less damage. Yeah, basically expect it to do less of a burst. I'm pretty sure if you run these on the Ravager, you'll still do perfectly fine. This will be the overall damage if you were to run Mark II level 1 Shocktrains, all 5 of them on the Ravager. This would be your damage. And yeah, as you guys can see, it's still a decent amount. You're not going to be one-shotting robots anymore. But yeah, I think that the Shocktrain isn't going to be dead. I still think it's a decent weapon, especially considering the other nerfs. So I'm going to be putting the Shocktrain in the OK category. I actually don't think that it's that bad of a nerf. Well, it is a bad nerf, but overall, considering how everything else has been nerfed, not that big of a deal. All right, let's move on to the Punchers. All right, so as you guys know, the Puncher is a staple heavy weapon that is currently being used on brawler bots. Sorry, not brawlers, Ambusher and Saboteur bots. So Kiri and Lynx are typically the ones that you would run the Puncher on. Yes, we are getting a 24% damage bonus, but you have to be very careful because like I said, you should never just look at one of these categories. You should look at the firing rate and the ammo as well. So the shot interval has been increased by 50%, which means you are now firing 50% slower. Well, sorry, you are now firing, 50% slower. And your ammo capacity has been halved. So currently the Punchers deal this much damage in this much time. And this will be the damage output post nerf. And you have to keep in mind, the Punchers, the way they used to work was, I'm pretty sure they locked down pretty quickly. Now you also have this statistic. I'm not exactly sure what that means for the lockdown accumulation overall, but hopefully that means you'll still be able to lock down the enemies pretty quickly. But yeah, I still think the Punchers will be really good. Obviously, the damage loss here, as you guys can see, is not very nice, but I still think it's fitting for the Lynx because if you can fire all the shots in this short amount of time, we already know the Lynx has a really short ability cooldown anyways. So you can literally just pop out, empty your clip, and then go back into cover and rinse and repeat. So the Puncher is still a pretty staple weapon, I'd say. Very good for free-to-play, and I still think it's worth leveling. So yeah, the Puncher, I'm still putting in the OK tier as well. So you guys may have already seen this earlier during the Avalanche review, but VS says the Puncher is dead. On paper, the numbers don't seem that bad, but apparently now it's dreadfully bad to use in game. So definitely don't invest in this thing anymore, because if the guy who makes detailed guides on robots says this weapon is cooked, it probably is. I'm just your numbers guy, so his test is probably much more accurate than my predictions. Anyways, sad to see this weapon go into the dustbin, because I was planning to build some of these for the links on my main account. I genuinely think that these weapons right here are still going to be good for free-to-play players. Now let's take a look finally at our last tier 3 weapon, the Viper. So the Viper is getting a pretty hefty nerf. We are getting a 60% increase in the shot interval. Now remember, an increase is not always a buff. This basically means you are now firing this much slower. So this is how much slower you're going to be firing. Not only that, they also nerfed the acceleration rate by 50%. Although they did make it so that you do increase dot, but overall that means that currently the Viper does this much damage. Now the new Viper after the nerfs will do this much damage. So it's a pretty hefty nerf. Obligatory posted it, as you saw from the math. This is actually a buff. So yes, Viper did get a buff, even if it's marginal. Remember, I record my reaction live and I fix things in the edits, so here's proof that people can lie, but math can't. Anyways, back to me doing bad math. I haven't seen Vipers that often in battle anyway, so I don't think it's going to be that impactful, but if you do run the Vipers, I think it's not enough to kill the Viper, but I do think that it's a pretty iffy change from Pixonic's part, so I'm going to be putting the Viper in the meh tier. Also, wait, actually, coming back, actually, these are the Reapers. Let me put this back real quick. The Viper is actually this item right here. So yeah. Anyways, Viper is a med change. I don't think that they needed a nerf. I think if they were left alone, I think the Viper would have been fine. I don't think it's breaking the game. To add to this, my ranking doesn't change since the Viper rarely gets any use in the meta right now anyways. If Pix was going to buff this weapon, they should have given it at least a 20% buff, not a 2% one, so the Viper to me still gets a meh ranking, and yeah, hopefully it gets a better buff in the future. But yeah, oh well, that's how Pixonic likes to roll. Alright, next category, Titans. Okay, so Titans I think overall got nerfed pretty hard. If you guys take a look at the categories, we are going to move on to ultimate stuff later, but I think what they were going for is they wanted to nerf every single Titan in the game to the point where either Princeps is going to dominate the meta, or Atlas, or the Ultimate Titans. And because the Ultimate Titans didn't get nerfed that hard, and yes, I'm also including Ultimate Arthur in this, we'll get to that more later, but yeah, I still think now the Ultimate Minos, the Ultimate Aoming, the Ultimate Arthur, and the Ultimate Nodens are now hands down the top 4 Titans in the game. And I still think that Atlas is right behind them, and then Princeps will probably be above Atlas. And then the rest of the Titans are now going to be pretty similar to each other, and there's not going to be a super dominating Titan before that. The Titans currently, after the nerfs from what I've seen, will now actually be able to be taken down by bots, especially because Teth, Ultimate Lancelot, Sword Unit, those bots did not get nerfed as hard as the Titans did. And I think now Titans will lose as more dominance than they do now in like turning the tides of the game. So if it's for instance, if a team has like an Ultimate Titan, they will single-handedly have more impact on the game than if your team were to drop several Titans to counter it. So yeah, overall, I'm not a fan of how they're trying to shift the meta. It seems to me that they're trying to sell robots more than Titans, probably because their sales have been hurt ever since Atlas was added to the game, because let's be honest, when you drop an Atlas, nothing can kill it, so there's no real reason to buy more bots. You could just drop a Tesla Teth and just go for Atlas the entire game. So I'm assuming Pixonic was trying to shift the meta around to be more bot focused than Titan focused. I'm still not a huge fan of it, so overall I'm going to be putting that in the meh category. I do think that Titans are a fun aspect of the game, even though they are kind of pay to win. But yeah, I just don't like the fact that Titans have lost a lot of their dominance, and hopefully they get buffed later on in the future. Now let's go more into the in-depth categories, starting off with the Atlas. I am a huge fan for the Atlas nerf. So if you guys don't know, the way that this is going to work is the Atlas's jump. If you guys don't understand how it works, obviously you guys have probably fought against Atlases before. Basically what happens is the Atlas jumps on you, it activates that shield, you try firing at it, you can't, so you wait out the shield duration, you then shoot at it, all of a sudden it jumps again, it gets a shield again, and then you typically die to it, and then you see your teammate then fight the Atlas again, and it does the exact same thing, so that it has like an infinite frontal absorber, and you're like, how does this thing just never die? There's actually a reason for why that works. So you might see these numbers and think, oh my god, the Atlas actually got buffed, the only thing it got nerfed is this ability cooldown. But that's actually not the case. So let me give you guys a breakdown of how this thing works. The Atlas basically, what it does is the frontal shield activation is for the first 2 seconds you actually jump, the shield is only a visual effect. So you're actually only getting 10 seconds of absorber shield, not 12. And what this means is now, instead of 10 seconds absorber, you're now having a 2-second animation and only a 5-second absorber time. So that is actually a pretty significant nerf to the Atlas. You are now actually going to be able to fight it and kill it. The built-in weapon of the Atlas never really did that much damage anyways. You can kind of think of it as a miniature void or chasm that's built into the Atlas robot. But yeah, honestly, I don't think this is going to be that impactful. It's 15,000 damage on a Titan when Titans do like hundreds of thousands of damage per second anyways. This is going to be marginal increase anyways. And the other thing you guys need to notice is heavy plating. I actually paused the video for a second and went to pull up the stats for you. So they didn't actually specify this. I don't know why they didn't put this into Chef Broil, but heavy plating is actually an ability that Chef Broil has. So the reason why the Atlas is so good at cycling its ability is because of this ability right here, heavy plating. Both of Atlas's abilities will instantly recharge if you drop it by 15% health. That's what this stat is right now, right? So what this means is now when you hurt the Atlas, like through its absorber, and you actually can do that now because it only has 5 seconds of it, remember? What that means is instead of after 15% damage taken, it instantly recharges the ability. It'll now have to take 40% of its health to actually recharge its ability. So very good. And also not only that, right now, Chef Broil only has a 20-second cooldown on it, but now it'll take 30 seconds. So basically what this means is you will now be seeing a lot more of the Kevin O'Reilly pilot over the Chef Broil pilot. It basically means that Atlas is a lot more killable now. So I think this is a massive W by Pixonic. Obviously, Atlas should never have been released as it is, and Atlas is still probably the most broken Titan in the game besides Ultimate Titans. But the reason why I'm putting it here is because Atlas is still a very new Titan. You guys have to remember Atlas was released last patch, I think, right? And they've already nerfed it to a point where you can actually kill it. So yeah, I think it's a pretty big change that they did. I wouldn't say that it's something super good because they are probably nerfing the Atlas so that they can sell the new Princeps Titan that's coming in from this next test server next patch. So yeah, pretty scummy move by them, but if we're looking objectively at the Atlas, it is a good thing that they nerfed it. So I'm going to be putting this one as a very good change.
Post-Edibretta here, VS tested the Atlas and noted that it's still pretty powerful but actually killable now. Great change by Pixonic.
So yeah, that's the summary for the Atlas nerf. And yes, it is not a buff. Do not get confused by all these positive percentages. The Atlas is getting nerfed. The only buff it got was this, and it's marginal. 15,000 damage is nothing for a Titan. Now it takes 40% more. It takes 40% damage instead of 15% for it to instantly recharge its abilities. And not only that, the abilities will take longer to actually recharge. Plus, the shield only lasts 5 seconds now, which is a lot more manageable than before. Overall, a good change for the Atlas. Now let's move on to the Mauler. Okay, I am very sad as somebody who does not own Mauler, but has a lot of friends who do run Maulers as their main Titan. This change is devastating for me. They basically took the Mauler and nerfed it to the ground in terms of mobility. Don't get me wrong, it's still a very strong brawler. In fact, I would actually put it on par with the current Luchador or maybe even a little bit stronger because the death marks did get buffed. But yeah, overall, I do think that it did get nerfed pretty hard. And if you guys look here, the mobility of the Mauler did get nerfed by 24%. Now, you can make this up pretty easily with your modules and your pilot skills. But yeah, the Mauler will now be a lot slower. And because of how the hook ability got nerfed, not only will the dot conversion only last 2.5 seconds now, you also have a 20-second cooldown per charge. You can no longer just dash across the map like you currently can and just dominate the enemies in their face. You now have to play a little smarter, especially because your death mark radius is now drastically smaller. It's about similar to the Kid ability now for perspective. And yeah, so you have to actually be close to actually get them inside the radius, but it's going to be easier to do because you're going to be able to slow them down more. And you're also going to have increased death mark damage off of that. So do I think that the Mauler is dead? No. But it's going to be losing a lot of its survivability simply because of these nerfs right here. So yeah, I think that Mauler is still going to be a top tier Titan, top 5 in the meta for sure. But yeah, I do genuinely dislike these overall nerfs. But I think Pixonic did it because they didn't like how Mauler, which is technically a free-to-play bot now, you can get this in the black market during certain events. The fact that free-to-play players are running just this, and pretty much everyone in Champs is either running it Ultimate Titan or the Mauler or the Atlas, they didn't like that, and they wanted to increase the sales of the newer Titans, so they nerfed the Mauler pretty hard. So I'm putting this one as a meh. because I am not a fan as to how they treated this Mauler. So yeah, also a fun fact about all these images, I did get them all from the wiki except for this one and this one that I just took from Google. But yeah, the rest of these images are all from the wiki, and I don't know why the wiki has a dancing Mauler, but we take that.
Alright, so VS once again tested the Mauler, but for this one he notes that it seems like it'll be okay, but that we should wait for the live server to be extra sure. As I've said previously, I personally think the Mauler will stay in the meta since it beats the Luchador, so for the time being, Mauler enjoys out there, congratulations, because it survives yet another wave of nerfs.
Alright, so yeah, Mauler is like that. Alright, moving on from Mauler, let's go to the Bersagliere, or Bersagliere. I like to call it the Bersag for short, or Bersa. It's getting a drastic increase in its health, 40% more. It's getting a marginal amount of defense points. This isn't actually going to have that much of an impact. It just means that it's now similar to the average Titan. The fatigue shot got a slight nerf, and this, in my opinion, is a pretty big nerf. The fatigue shot damage bonus is now drastically lower, but overall, the Bersagliere I think is going to be pretty good. I don't think they nerfed anything besides that, so the jump is still 7 seconds, so you have a lot of mobility. You still have the stealth from the pilot, and let's be honest, the only time you really used the bow was for the shield breaker. The damage from the bow got nerfed hard in the past anyways, and nowadays it's only really good for when you want to snipe like an occasional pesky fly from halfway across the map. It wasn't really meant to kill, it was mostly meant to annoy them and keep them away. So yeah, I still think Bersagliere is going to be pretty good. And I would actually put this as one of the top like 7 Titans. I think it might actually be better than the Mauler now if you play it properly. So yeah, Bersagliere didn't get touched. Its durability got increased even. And yeah, the main parts of what makes it OP, the dash and the stealth, unchanged. And it still has that lovely shield breaker. And I think that we're going to be seeing a lot more swords. So I think Bersagliere might be one of the best go-to Titans if you are a free-to-play player. I'm actually going to be putting the Bersagliere changes. Sorry. Yeah, I have to keep cutting the video because let's be honest, it's so hard to find everything in here. Anyways, I'm going to be putting the Bersagliere in the amazing category. Mostly because I genuinely expected Bersagliere to get nerfed because of how dominant it's been as a Atlas counter, as a sword counter. But yeah, they didn't nerf it. They only nerfed the damage slightly, but overall, what makes the Bersagliere strong is not the bow, it's the ability to shield break and the insane mobility it has from its dashes. So yeah, Bersagliere is still an S tier Titan. I genuinely think, I don't know why Pixonic decided to not nerf it, but yeah, I like it. Bersagliere is still an S tier Titan in my eyes.
When VS tested the Bersag, he confirms exactly what I said. It's now more tanky in exchange for a little bit less damage, which, considering what's been happening in the Rebalance, is an absolute win. So if you have a Bersagliere lying in your hangar somewhere, bring it out, because this thing works as a sniper, mid-ranger, or brawler depending on the weapons you run, and yeah, it's truly an S tier Titan. Make sure you use it if you have it. Moving on to the Eiffel. So the Eiffel did unfortunately get nerfed a little bit, so as you guys can see, the armor placed in the air, you get like a marginal amount. Let's be honest, no Titan's not going to care about 15,000 health. Even with pilot skills, that only will go up to like, what, 40,000? And yeah, 40,000 health is nothing for a Titan that has 1,000,000 HP. And also the Cannoneer damage bonus will be pretty noticeable. The thing you have to realize though is the Cannoneer bonus damage only applied to the beta weapons. So let's say, for instance, you run the Arbiter Equalizer Eiffel, like most of the community does. Your Equalizers would be doing 25% more damage, which makes the Eiffel have similar firepower to the Ultimate Ao Ming. But now you're just going to be losing out on that damage bonus, but let's be honest, 17% damage loss on those 2 beta weapons isn't actually that big of a difference. Because remember, what makes Eiffel OP is the mobility and the fact that the ability charges give you leeway to really dominate the map, right? Because you can do the super dash technique still, and they didn't nerf the cooldowns in any way. So I still think the Eiffel will be a meta Titan. I might actually think that, considering how Maulers got nerfed, and you guys will see that the Brawler Titans in general did get pretty nerfed, like overall all across the board, I think that the Eiffel is going to be meta. A lot of people are saying that the Eiffel is cooked and it's going to be dead. I actually think the opposite. I would say that the Eiffel is going to remain in the meta on top of Bersagliere. So yeah, I genuinely think Eiffel didn't actually get touched that hard. You guys will be surprised. Mark my words, Eiffel is still going to be in meta, and I don't think it's going to be easy to kill. So I'm actually going to put the Eiffel in the amazing category. You guys can leave comments if you want to argue that, but trust me, what makes the Eiffel strong is not the damage bonus on the beta weapons. It is the fact that it has insane mobility. It's got 5 weapons in the form of 3 alphas plus 2 betas. It's got the ability to fly. You can travel basically across the entire map as long as you do the super dash technique. And yeah, it's also pretty good for free to play. So I think the Eiffel is going to remain in the meta, and we might actually see a rise of different weapon types now. You might not just need to run the Arbiter Equalizer, you can actually run the other weapon types, maybe even Titan Flames. I'd like to add that VS's favorite Titan is actually the Eiffel, and as you guys can see here, he actually runs the Ice Rocket Eiffel in his main hangar. We call him the Eiffel guy in our Reddit chats, so trust me when I say that if he says the Eiffel lives, then the Eiffel lives. Just like Bersagliere, if you've got this thing, try it out because it's a really fun Titan to run once you learn how to play it. Honestly, overall changes on Eiffel, I'm actually pretty happy with it. Obviously, the best case scenario would be it not getting nerfed at all or maybe even getting a buff, but the way things are with all the other Titans, I think this is a pretty good spot to be in. So yeah, let's move on to the Rook. Basically, nothing changed. 160 defense points to 140. Let's be honest, the Rook was never that tanky without its shields anyways, so not big of a difference. Like this 12.5%. If you do the math here, you're essentially going from this much resistance to this much resistance. You guys look me in the eye and tell me, is this really that big of a deal? Probably not. Now, on the other hand, it did get 5 kilometers per hour faster. Again, not that big of a deal, but hey, bonus speed is always good on a Titan. So honestly, I'm actually surprised with the Rook. I'm going to actually put the Rook inside the nothing changed category. So yeah, Rook is going to be in the nothing changed. I honestly think that the buff and nerf balance each other out, so you're basically not going to notice any change whatsoever in the Rook. And also, same thing for here. Bersagliere and Eiffel, you're not going to notice any change, but I'm putting them up in the amazing tier because what makes the Titans good haven't been touched, and I fully expected these to be nerfed. As for the Rook, it hasn't been touched at all. Nothing more to really say here. VS notes it's basically the same as it is right now. W to your Rook enjoyers out there. Moving on to the Indra. Okay, so a lot of people are freaking out that the Indra has gotten hard nerfed. I don't think it got nerfed that hard. And I think a lot of people are overblowing the issue. Something you have to realize is, since all the Titans got nerfed, you might actually think, oh, it got a tiered emotion, that's not good. You guys have to notice, tiered emotions mean nothing. If I wanted to use an example, right? Look at the Minos and the Ox Minos. You guys can still see those Titans in the battlefield. You'll still see them fighting against the tier 4 Titans. Do you notice anything different? No. In fact, the only difference that tier 3 Titans have is intel. And I'm going to be honest with you, the fact that nothing else changes but intel means there's actually not that big of a change. In fact, you're probably not going to notice any change whatsoever. From my memory, tier 3 intel is actually less harsh than tier 4 intel, so it might actually overall be a buff. And not only that, tier 3 means you can now buy the Titan in the shop for 1,000 platinum. So if you're too tired to wait for a black market chest, you can now get the Indra now through direct purchase. So honestly, overall, I think that's a good change. People are looking at this saying, oh my god, the durability got nerfed by 10%. Yeah, it's not that big of a deal. The Indra is still going to have like 1.4 million HP with pilot skills. Movement speed got a little bit faster. Again, basically no change, right? The lasso radius, 200 meters. Okay. I mean, let's be honest. What made the Indra OP wasn't even the lasso or the cooldown of the lasso. It's actually this right here, the Vipsana. So the Vipsana, if you guys don't know, is the phase shift ability that it has, similar to the Transcendence for Ravana. And 3 seconds more cooldown on it is actually not that bad. And you have to realize this is huge. You're getting 10% more movement speed during your Transcendence, right? And your cooldown is actually not going to be that different. So the only thing that really got nerfed on the Indra is the lasso. So if you're one of those Indra players that depends on using the lasso often, then yes, you will feel the nerf a little bit. But overall, Indra didn't get touched that hard. People are saying that it's the death of the Indra. No, it's not. I genuinely think Indra is still going to be one of the best Titans. And honestly speaking, from Pixonic's point of view, for a free-to-play Titan to be doing this good, I'm honestly surprised it didn't get nerfed harder. I actually would have expected the cooldown for the phase shift to go from 14 seconds to like 18 or even 20. 17 seconds, only 3 seconds more. Like, yes, it's a 21% increase, but realistically speaking, it's actually not going to be that bad. I still think that as long as you play the Indra carefully like you always have, it'll still be a solid Titan and it still remains in the meta. So I'm actually going to be putting the Indra a little controversially inside the expected category. Sorry, it takes me forever to find these guys. Anyways, I'm going to put Indra in expected. Actually, you know what? Not even expected. I'm going to put it in amazing because remember, I said that I thought it would get nerfed harder. Indra has actually not been nerfed as hard as I thought it would be. And it's still so good because it's still dominating against Titans like Atlas because remember, it still has the phase shift and now Atlas has an absorber shield that actually goes down. One transcendence or what's it called again? The Vipsana. One Vipassana charge is going to last long enough for the Atlas's absorber shield to go down. You guys have to realize that. Indra might actually be a really powerful counter to the Atlas now. And not only that, you can wait out like death marks, you can wait out other Titan abilities like reflectors. Indra is still a solid Titan, don't get me wrong. Not only that, you still have Death Survivor on it for the Titan pilot, so you can get an extra charge if your health drops below a certain point. And yeah, overall, Indra will be a solid Titan. Don't worry guys, if you guys have an invested Indra, don't fret. You can still run it, it'll still do good. Alright, so VS tested the Indra and he says that it's noticeably more squishy, but he also says that as long as you know how to use the Vipassana ability smartly, Indra will still be viable in the meta. So it's still a nerf, but not anywhere near as bad as that expected. So if you love the Indra, keep running it because it's still an S tier Titan. Alright? The numbers speak. It looks like a lot of stuff, but trust me, the only important thing you have to realize is this is all lasso stuff. If you ignore it, all you really get is a 3-second increase in phase shift in exchange for a 10% increase in speed and just a minor health nerf. The Indra hasn't been touched at all. And in fact, I would actually call it better because you can now buy it in the shop directly. Genuinely one of the best changes. Compared to the nerfs around here at least, one of the best changes because it's not that hard of a nerf, okay? Don't freak out guys. Moving on to the Luchador. Not much to be said here. All they said was that the jump distance was reduced. And they say it's a qualitative nerf. I don't know how big the jump nerf is, so I can't really comment on this. So the only thing we really have to go off of is that it dropped from tier 4 to 3. And again, a tier change is nothing. A tier change is the equivalent of nothing happening, okay? So Luchador literally is nothing changed. You won't feel any change. The reflector didn't change. The percentages didn't change. All that changed was it got like a slightly smaller jump, okay? Luchador is still meta. You guys don't need to freak out about it. VS tried out the Luchador and notes that it's still basically the same, so nothing to worry about guys. Remember, everything else in the meta got nerfed, so this is actually a buff for the Luchador all things considered, especially since it's now immune to intel. Moving on from that, Nodens. So it got slightly more defense points. 10 defense points from the ability is not going to affect it at all. This on the other hand is good. You're going to get more healing and it also heals a slight bit more. But yeah, overall, not enough like increases in my opinion for Nodens to be that big of a notice. For those of you guys who somehow do run Nodens still, all you'll notice is that you'll heal your teammates more, and that's pretty much it. So yeah, Nodens, I'm going to be putting this thing. I'm going to be putting the Nodens at nothing changed. So you're not going to notice anything. All right, Sharanga. Bonus damage from full power increased, phase exile, cooldown nerfed. So yeah, well, not nerfed, buffed. It got decreased, which means you now have shorter cooldown time. So literally, as you guys can see here, I don't know how to explain it better. They literally just increased your damage, and you'll also have a shorter cooldown on the phase exile. So just an all-around buff overall. I'm actually gonna put this as expected because Sharanga hasn't been doing too hot. And it's not an amazing change because these number increases aren't enough to make the Sharanga meta, but I still think it's a welcome change, so I'll put it in the expected category. Alright, moving on to the Heimdall. Literally a tier change, nothing happened. Heimdall is the same. In fact, it might be a little bit stronger because remember, when everything gets nerfed and you stay the same, you are indirectly getting buffed. We're going to be skimming through the Aether and the Sirius too. Aether and Sirius both have nothing changed except tier changes, so Aether is right here. So nothing changed for the Aether. and nothing changed for the Sirius. VS also commented that Aether is now a slightly better mirror mix with the intel change, though he says that if you have a Newton or a Bersagliere, you should definitely level those instead. Of course, if you like the Aether, then you can still level that, just know that it's not going to be the strongest Titan out there. So far, this is what the changes are like. We still have a lot left to go. I might have to speed things up a bit. Remember, the video is long, so skip ahead if you guys want to. Alright, so Titan weapons. Alright, so a quick word from post-edit Brother here before we start the section. I actually swapped around the alpha weapons and the beta weapons so that, the alpha weapon comes first before the beta. I actually didn't change the numbers though in the process, so I will be posting the actual numbers on top as an overlay. So bear in mind, the numbers you see on the screen initially are not correct. I will put the correct numbers on top afterwards. I took a look at the balance changes for Titan weapons overall, and I do think that the buffs and nerfs have been decent. I do think, like I said, that the weapons got a little bit over nerfed in my opinion, but I think that's a good thing because Titan weapons in the current state of the game melt through literally everything in like 2 seconds. So I do think that Titan weapons getting a small damage nerf is fine, but I do think that if they do that, they should also nerf the robot weapons a bit. You guys will hear my thoughts later when I get to the ultimate section. I am not a fan of how they did this balance change. I genuinely think that it would have been fine as long as they also nerfed a lot of the UE gear, but as you guys will see later, the ultimate weapons actually got buffed, which is kind of insane. So yeah, overall though, I think the Titan weapon nerfs are fine. None of the weapons are really killed off except for maybe some of them like the Vajras, but even then, I still think those weapons will do fine. So yeah, let's just get into the breakdown. Starting off, we have Void and Chasm. Essentially, all they're doing is they're increasing the damage per particle by a little bit. Basically, that just means every shot you do is now going from this to this. Not that big of a change. Particle dispersion basically means that you now have more spread. Basically, what this means is right now, the Void and Chasms, when they shoot, are basically 100% accurate up to like 400 meters. And they're basically just making it so that you have to actually get closer to do the max damage, which I think is fine because these weapons are technically shotguns. So being close range weapons should be what the case is, but right now you can use them as like mid-range weapons too. And I genuinely think they should change that, and I welcome that change. They also made it so that it damages you a little bit slower while it's reloading, and in exchange they also made it so that once it's done reloading, it gets an increased damage bonus. So overall, this is a buff, I would say, to the Void Chasm, but I do like how they changed the particle dispersion, and this is a big nerf. So overall, you're going to have a lot more damage with the Void Chasm at closer range, but if you're using these weapons at longer range, that's no longer going to be easy because your damage will fall off. So I'm actually going to put this balance change as a W from Pixonic, because again, these weapons are very new. The Void Chasm should have stayed in the meta for a lot longer, and they decided to nerf it literally one patch after it came out, so absolute W in my opinion. Alright, moving on to the Huginn and Muninn. Alright, post-Arbiter here. As I said before in the overview, I did flip around the numbers on accident, so here are the official numbers right here. Back to the official video. Obviously, they got nerfed pretty hard in terms of damage. Not only that, your reload and ammo capacity has been shortened drastically. That means that your damage has now gone from this to this. You're essentially getting a this much % damage nerf. I'm not a fan of that, especially because these weapons, I use them in Extermination a lot. And on top of that, now you can only chain to 3 enemies. I don't think that's going to be a big deal in real games, but in Extermination that will hurt a little bit. I do think these weapons now, you can't use my Extermination strategy for anymore, but I still think these will be solid weapons. Alright, post-Arbiter here. As you saw from the numbers, both of these weapons are losing more than half of their damage, so they're pretty much dead. VS has also tried them out and told me that they basically do no damage now and are horrible to run, so yeah, looks like Pixonic was tired of seeing these everywhere. I'm really sad about this one because as annoying as they are to fight against, they were OP in Extermination, and now we won't have a good replacement until the new Titan weapons, which are basically a hybrid of the Arbiters and like the robot versions of the Atomizers, drops on the live server. And that's going to be pay to win to get anyways, so yeah, pretty bummed about this one. In comparison to the other ones, simply because they're 100% accurate, I don't think they've changed the way that the weapons can chain through walls sometimes, and they do still do instant damage and lockdown. So yeah, weapons overall got nerfed, but I'm honestly going to put this in the expected category. Because let's be honest, these weapons are dominant anyways. If you look at any Mauler, what are they using? The chains. You look at any Atlas, what are they using? Void Chasm, Huginn, Muninn. Nothing else. So I do think that this nerf was due, and I think that Pixonic did do a decent job of nerfing it. Although the damage nerf is quite high, so you might actually want to use the other weapons now, which is good, because remember, nerfing Huginn and Muninn means that you can use like the other shotguns and other weapons more, which is honestly a welcome change. So I like that. Pretty good change by Pixonic, despite being nerfed pretty hard. Alright, so next up is the Arbiter and Equalizer. Alright, so once again, here are the correct values. Back to the video. I personally run this weapon setup on my Ultimate Ao Ming, so I, of course, am not going to be happy about it. However, I do think that they deserve this nerf, because if you guys have any Titan that uses the Arbiter Equalizer, whether it's the Bjorn, the Eiffel, or like the Ao Ming, you will realize that this thing, once the nuke camps charge up, will literally burn through anything like they're made of paper, right? So I do think that this damage nerf is not that big. However, this is pretty big. That essentially means your damage is going to be this much less, and you're going to be doing a lot less damage now because of that. Not to mention, yes, you will fire faster, but you're going to be overheating a lot, and you're going to be spending more time reloading. So overall, I think not that big of a change. I would actually put this as expected. They didn't get nerfed as hard as I thought they'd be. So yeah, I genuinely think that what will happen is the new weapons will replace the Arbiter and essentially become the new meta weapon once they're released. Yeah, I'm actually gonna put the Arbiter Equalizer in the expected category. Again, they were dominant alongside the Huginn Muninn, so yeah, no real surprise there. Also, VS tested the weapons and he notes that they're still good, so honestly, just keep running them if you're running them already. Alright, moving on to the Maha-Vajra and the Vajra. Basically, you're getting a pretty big nerf to the damage, so 17%, and you're also making it so that your reload is shorter though, so that's a big buff. The only issue is this. You're actually getting a lot more spread, so don't get me wrong, the Maha-Vajra and the Vajra will still be good, but expect to need to be a lot closer now. Currently, Titans can fight at around 200 meters and still do decently with them. You might need to get a little bit closer to like the 100 meter range to actually dish out the same damage as you would now. So yeah, honestly, considering how dominant these marble shotguns are, I still think that this was expected. It's actually not as bad as of a nerf as I expected it to be. It could be worse, but yeah, we'll have to see how bad the spread is. But I genuinely think that it's in the expected category again. So yeah, I genuinely think all the Titan weapons so far are nerfs that I've been expecting, because these weapons are dominating pretty hard. Don't worry, I didn't forget the numbers. So yeah, they got a 10% nerf overall, but something that VS noted when he tested these weapons is that they spread a lot more now. So they feel pretty horrible to play unless you're literally right up in the enemy's face. So yeah, unfortunately, if your Titan does not have a lot of mobility, you're probably going to want to replace these weapons with something else. Unfortunate. Moving on to the Striker. Okay, Striker, I expected this nerf because if you guys have fought against the Striker Bersagliere, because that's the one that I see the most often, holy crap are these weapons stupid. To give you an idea of how broken they are, they can one-shot my Ao Ming, they can one-shot my sword, they can one-shot every robot I have besides my ultimate Lancelot. That's how broken these Strikers are when they're charged up on the Bersagliere. But yeah, we're getting a solid damage nerf in exchange for more ammo capacity. So overall, the damage evens out to about this much. Currently, it does this at a max charge. Now it'll do this post nerf. And essentially what they're making it so is they're changing it so that you have a lot more time spent reloading. So instead of reloading a charge every 2 seconds, you're now going to be charging one every 8, I think is what it is. So yeah, I haven't actually used the Striker, so I can't really comment too much on this, but judging from what I'm seeing, Striker is essentially going to be doing similar amounts of burst damage, but you're going to be spending a lot more time reloading. It'll be a lot more similar to the Vindicators and the Fulgar Tonans. VS also tested it, and yeah, it's pretty much dead, so I'd rather you guys use the Vindicators instead of the Striker from now on, because honestly, Vindicators will do much more damage and they have like a similar reload time now. So yeah, Pixonic basically killed off the Striker, which is really sad. the Striker, I was expecting this nerf, so I'm going to be putting this one as expected as well. And remember, these are all not necessarily in terms of like how like OP it is or how good of a or bad of like numbers change it is. What I'm doing it is literally off of my opinion. Do I think it's a good change for the health of the game, right? I think that these weapon changes are good for the game because these are the only weapons that are being run on Titans. These getting nerfed means that other Titan weapons have the chance to shine. Same case for these Titans getting nerfed. I still think that these Titans are now going to be very dominant, but the fact that these Titans didn't change at all means, again, the Titan meta is just shifting so that these Titans are now a lot more closer together, bunched up. Obviously, I'm not a fan of the Mauler nerf, but it is what it is. Remember, this tier list is purely subjective. It's not objective by any means. So if you guys have a different opinion, feel free to share that in the comments below. All right, moving on to the Veyron and Evora. Or Evora, I guess. These are the bubble Titan Sonics, or the bubble guns, like I like to call it. They're actually getting a decent damage buff. Oh wait, I just realized something. I swapped around the title. Wow, I noticed that so early. Anyways, here are the updated stats, and you guys will actually see me swap to the correct values in the official video. So let's get back to the content. Evora Veyron. Yeah, the Evora is what's getting the 24% buff. The Veyron is not actually getting changed. So essentially, they're just making the beta weapon a lot, more consistent. They're getting more particle dispersion, and they're also firing a lot slower. So yeah, overall, you're going to see about this much damage change. So before it does this much damage in one clip, now it does this much damage. And something that you'll see with all the Titan weapons is they're all getting this particle dispersion. So don't think that the Maha-Vajra and the Vajra are getting hard nerfed because this spread is being applied to all the brawler weapons. It's basically forcing all the Titans to get closer before you can actually start engaging your weapons, right? So I don't think that this is going to be a big nerf, especially for the Vajras and Maha-Vajras as well. So yeah, I think that this is a little undeserved because Sonics are kind of weak. So I'm actually going to be putting this one in the okay category. I think the nerf is okay, but I don't think it was deserved because, again, these are one of the weaker Titan weapons. So VS notes that the weapons are still good as long as you maintain some close range. So yeah, if you need a bit more range, swap to the ice rockets or the flames, but otherwise you're good to go with the bubble guns. Moving on to the Anguisher and Ruiner. Same case here, actually, as some of the above choices. We're getting a lot of dispersion and the damage itself hasn't changed. So essentially they're just saying, get close to do your damage. And this damage per dot means that the Anguisher Ruiner are now going to be doing this much damage as compared to this damage, which is what was before. So it's about this much of a buff. Honestly, I think it's pretty good because compared to how the other weapons have been going, it's a decent change. However, overall, do I think that the weapons got changed a lot? Nope. I think nothing has changed. You're not going to notice anything different. You're going to just have to get closer to actually fight people now. Alright, so I'm sure a lot of you guys probably know by now, but the Anguisher and the Ruiner don't do the 1.3 million damage that it says it does here. And realistically, what actually happens is the shots will miss 50% of their shots, so the actual damage you do is a lot less than this. Not only that, now that their spread is actually greater, the Anguisher and Ruiner are actually going to be a lot worse than what you might think they are before. Especially because the shot dispersion is so big that even with the damage buff they got, it's actually going to be drastically worse unless you're literally at point blank range. VS tried it out and he says that they're pretty mid now, so I would highly suggest swapping to other weapons. Not that many people ran these anyways because they were dead since a long time ago. So honestly, I was expecting better from picks. Kind of sad that they didn't buff them and they just kind of let them be. Moving on to the Kisten Bulava. Now this, when I saw it for the first time, I was freaking out. You now have a 6-second reload and there's 2 meters of more splash. These Titan weapons, if you guys don't know, can basically 2-clip any Titan because Titans move really slowly. And now the fact that they have a shorter reload interval means you're probably going to be expecting a lot more Titans like Aether and maybe even Bersagliere, maybe Muramets to be running these weapons again, because now that they have a very short reload in comparison to this much damage, by the way, you're going to be seeing a lot more of these weapons, because with 12 meters radius, not only will they be able to do a lot of damage against Titans, they will now actually be able to do decently well against normal bots as well, because that's quite a bit of splash radius. So yeah, I think this is a really good change by Pixonic. I'm actually going to put this one as an amazing change. I think that the fact that the Kisten Bulava got buffed is really cool because I didn't think these weapons would get even looked at by Pixonic. But the fact that Pixonic are looking at the Titan Vortexes, I'm all for it. I would love to see these weapons in the meta again because they do require some skill to play and they are very fun to run. So yeah, I'm welcoming of that change. All right, moving on to the Basilisk and the Krait. Again, I think I swapped around these weapons so you guys can see here, Krait Basilisk. The numbers don't matter too much. Basically the same. Dot got slightly reduced, but in reality, you're not going to really notice a big difference here. All right, and to add on to that, you guys can see here, the damage output for the Krait and the Basilisk is pretty good. Overall, Basilisk got a slight buff, a 0.5% buff, and Krait got a minor nerf, 6.5%. Overall, these weapons are going to feel pretty good. VS even comments that they still feel fine, and you just really have to watch out for that 9-second reload. So yeah, honestly, these are going to be pretty decent weapons if you are a light spender. So if you guys don't have a lot of platinum, then this is a good weapon to invest in. So Basilisk, Krait, basically going to be the same, and yeah, you're not going to really notice any change. So yeah, that is all the Titan weapons done. All right, so now we're going to be quickly talking about the pilots. I'm not going to be doing an overview because there's only 2 of them. So yeah, let's first start with the Yangli Titan pilot. It got reduced by a tier and it now no longer works on any Titan that has a dedicated pilot. I personally think that is BS and a horrible change by Pixonic because now it essentially forces you to go for the Titan pilot after you get it. So let's say, for instance, you win a Atlas out of a random Titan datapad and you're really happy for it. Now you can't even run Yangli on the Atlas. You would have to get like either the Chef Broil or the Kevin O'Reilly through another Titan datapad to actually be able to get Titan skills unlocked. Whereas before you could use Yangli and get these benefits right here. So yeah, kind of a bummer. I'm very disappointed by Pixonic in this change, but I can understand why they do it. But again, just not a good change overall. You didn't have to do it. Yangli is meant to be a universal Titan pilot. Why would you nerf it? Like, it wasn't having a big impact on the game because the dedicated pilots were broken anyways. There was just no need to, put more ashes into the fire. It was just unnecessary. So yeah, very L change by Pixonic. Otto Schreyer. So the arms now work with Otto. So what Otto does is it makes the plasma weapons fire 25% faster. So the Taron, Redeemer, Magnum, and then the Blights, and then I think the Spears as well. And now the Arm L and the Arm M are also included in that. Do I think that that's a buff? Technically speaking, no, because you guys will see very soon that the arms got nerfed. Essentially what happens is, I'll talk about it later too, when you run Otto on the arms, they will fire at the same speed that they do right now. Because the arms got a fire rate nerf. So yeah, but overall though, considering that arms did get nerfed overall, if you want to run a long-ranged arm build, Otto will be good. So yeah, honestly, that's a W change. Do I think that it's super impactful? No, but the fact that Otto can do that at least right now is pretty amazing. It's not game-breaking, but it is pretty amazing. So yeah, decent move by Pixonic, I guess. All right, so moving on to Ultimate Titans. Again, there's only 2 things here, so I'm not going to be, doing an overview. But I will say, I'm very disappointed by the fact that they did not nerf the other Ultimate Titans. So Ultimate Minos and Ultimate Ao Ming are currently 2 of the strongest Titans in the game. Ultimate Arthur was contender for the best Titan in the game alongside the Atlas, but Atlas got nerfed really hard, so that thing's now in the dumpster fire. And Ultimate Arthur, despite what you see here, didn't actually get nerfed that bad. So let me break this down for you real quick. Yes, the durability got nerfed by 30% basically, so a big nerf. And yes, the defense points got halved basically, which translates from this much defense to this much defense, meaning that if you fire past the shields, the Arthur is basically made of paper now. And on top of that, it used to have the bedwear ability of healing 40,000 per second, but now it only heals 10,000, meaning it is going to be a lot squishier. It is a little bit slower, the blast wave is a lot weaker and has a longer cooldown, but it has more recoil. Now, the reason why I think the Arthur hasn't gotten nerfed that big is because what makes the Arthur strong is not any of what's listed here, it's the shields, right? Arthur is strong because you have a 20 million physical shield in the front that basically soaks up everything for you. Basically what this change does is it makes Arthur less of an opposing force. It can't really chase people as hard anymore. But I do think that the Ultimate Arthur will die in the next patch because the new Titan weapons have a splash radius and can go straight through the Arthur shield. So yeah, very big rip to anybody who went for the Ultimate Arthur. Enjoy it while you can. I still think it's going to be a top 5 Titan, including Ultimate Titans, but I don't know. If I were you, if you have an Ultimate Ao Ming or an Ultimate Minos, I would pull those out. Because from what I'm gathering, I think those 2 Titans will take over the new meta alongside the Princeps Titan. And maybe even Ultimate Nodens as well. So yeah. Anyways, I'm kind of disappointed they didn't nerf the other Ultimate Titans. So we'll move on. Oh, I almost forgot. Forgot to do a tier list for this one. So Ultimate Arthur getting nerfed. I'm pretty sad about it. Okay. So for you free-to-play players out there, I know that this is a good change for you, but think about it this way. Somebody had to spend $500 to get the Ultimate Arthur, and now it's basically as weak as an Atlas. That's just scummy move by Pixonic because Ultimate stuff isn't supposed to be nerfed super hard, and they just hard nerfed the Arthur. So yeah, I'm not a huge fan of that. Anyways, that's just my thought. I guess for the overall health of the game, it's pretty good. So let me just put it meh in the middle, okay? I don't think that the Arthur is dead, but I'm not a huge fan of the change. All right, Ultimate Grum. Pretty big damage nerf, 30%. It also fires like 50% slower, essentially. Has more ammo, so it's basically getting the Kirin Mogwan treatment, where you can basically fire pretty much indefinitely now. So yeah, I guess take that how you will. Grums will be a little bit weaker now, and I still think that the Void Chasm Ultimate Arthur will be better. So yeah, Ultimate Grums, again, pretty big L that they nerfed it, but I think that was deserved considering how broken they were. So I'm going to be putting this as expected.
So I don't know how many of you this will help, but I ended up doing the math, albeit a little painfully, for the Ultimate Grum. It's kind of funny to think that they'll now fire indefinitely thanks to the fire rate being slower than the reload, but yeah. I don't have the exact numbers, but the Voids will do similar if not more damage than the Ultimate Grums, and they cost way less to upgrade. So I would personally avoid running the UE Grums for now because Pixonic has basically nerfed them out of existence.
Now, Ultimate Robots. I'm going to be doing a quick overview right here. So, judging from all the stuff that's included here, they basically nerfed all the they nerfed all the meta Ultimate Robots, and they buffed all the non-meta ones. So, overall pretty good, but I will say, why the hell was the Ultimate Ravana and Ultimate Cryo, alongside the Ultimate Lancelot and Ultimate Plasma weapons, so Taran and Redeemer, not mentioned here? Okay, I have an Ultimate Lancelot, okay? I run it for fun, and I can say it desperately needs a nerf. The damage needs to be at least halved because right now, a full clip without any damage buffs does this much damage. 1.4 million, guys. That can one clip a Titan. They should have no business doing that much damage. And remember, they don't get any spread because the ultimate weapons, of course, did not get hit with any dispersion nerf. I personally think they should have at least nerfed the Taran and Redeemer. So I'm very disappointed by Pix not including that, but it's what it is. I'm just not a fan of it. Anyways, moving on to the Ultimate Sword. So the Ultimate Sword got slightly nerfed, a slight buff in the durability. This is basically unchanged. Got a slight speed buff. This is pretty big. And now this basically means now the Ultimate Sword will get 1 less sword slash, 1 or 2 less. I'm not super sure how many, but yeah. And then otherwise, everything is going to be the same apparently as the Ordinary Edition. So I'm assuming that also means that when we get to the sword, any damage nerfs there will be similar to what happens to the Ultimate Sword. So yeah, overall, I think pretty good because the Ultimate Sword is hands down the best Titan killer in the game right now. So I do think that the Ultimate Sword getting nerfed was due, but I also think that it's pretty scummy that they nerf a Ultimate bot that costs around $1,000 to get. So I'm going to put it in the okay category. It was expected, but I'm not a huge fan of how it got nerfed, especially considering the cost of how much Ultimate gear is, right? It's really expensive. Ultimate Leech. Slight durability bonus. Again, this is marginal, doesn't matter. Repulse redirected damage. 50% to 38% is pretty decent. That's a big nerf. The defense points from the Leech. Marginal. Yes, you can still fire at it, but at this point, you're still taking so much damage, it's not worth it. This is pretty big. A 3-second shorter repulse in exchange for a 2-second shorter cooldown. I guess it's worth it, but yeah, not a huge thing. And then of course, I think this is the ultimate, not ultimate. I don't know which pilot this is, but reducing the leech ability cooldown from 15 to 10%. Again, marginal. Right, I'm not gonna lie, I think Pix is smoking crack on this one because the ultimate leech pilot doesn't mention anything about a cooldown anywhere. Someone let me know in the comments if I'm wrong, but until proven otherwise, I'm just gonna assume Pix forgot what this pilot even does. I think the ultimate leech overall has stayed basically the same. Yes, it's a slight nerf, but overall, when you're running the ultimate leech, you're not gonna be noticing any changes. Also, can we just talk about how the wiki has the wiki has the leech with literally nothing equipped on it as the image? So funny. Anyways, moving on to the Ultimate Griffin. The damage bonus from jumping is nerfed. The damage bonus duration is nerfed. The blind duration is nerfed, meaning that now, once it jumps in the air, you can actually shoot it as it's falling down on the ground and you won't get blinded by it. So I think, personally, that's a pretty big nerf to the Ultimate Griffin. But I think it's deserved, considering it's been out in the game for a while, and it's still stupidly broken. So yeah, well deserved. In exchange, they buffed the cooldown, so it's 2 seconds shorter now. So I think overall the trade-offs are good. Ultimate Griffin got a pretty well balanced, so I'm actually gonna put this one in the amazing tier. I think that it got balanced pretty well considering how broken it is in the meta. So yeah, it's still a very strong bot, and if you have it, I still highly suggest investing into it. Ultimate Destrier. So this one's fun. I don't have this one because I wasn't playing water bots at the time, but everyone got this for free, and Destrier is actually getting a massive speed increase. So I'm actually going to put this one as Pix You're Goated, because this is a free bot. No one had to buy the Ultimate Destrier. So I think this is the Ultimate Destrier. Also, again, for some weird reason, the wiki has no weapons on the Destrier for some reason. I still find that very funny. But yeah, it's a free bot, and they buffed it pretty hard. So I don't know, pretty big W from Pixonic there. All right, moving on to the Ultimate Fusion. 20,000 more Aegis. About 15% increase. Are you going to notice that change? No. So Ultimate Fusion, no change. Nothing was expected. Moving on. Yeah, that was pretty quick. Ultimate Spectre. 1 second more stealth, 2 seconds shorter cooldown. Pretty straightforward buff. I don't know how much more I can elaborate. If you have the Ultimate Spectre for some weird reason and you haven't upgraded it, invest in it. I think now it's actually going to be a decent bot to use. So yeah. I'm going to put that in amazing. Pretty good buff for a bot that doesn't really see much play. Ultimate Invader. 3 more speed, 10 more defense points. It's going to feel the exact same. Honestly, I'm actually going to put this one as a meh. Because if you guys don't know, Ultimate Invader, despite being an ultimate robot, has the same power as a Raptor. It should at least be a little bit stronger than the Raptor. It shouldn't be a little bit like on par or weaker than a Raptor, right? I still think it should get a little bit more of a buff. So kind of disappointed that Pixonic didn't address it. Unfortunate for you guys who have an Ultimate Invader. I hope that Pixonic comes back and buffs this a bit more in the future. All right, moving on to the Ultimate Mender. A little bit more healing, shorter cooldown, and not only that, you get bonus damage on upgrading to higher levels of marks. So yeah, overall a very good buff for the Ultimate Mender. And I wasn't expecting a buff. I was actually expecting, no changes. So honestly, pretty amazing. We don't see that much play with the Ultimate Mender. Same for the Ultimate Ares. We now have a slightly longer duration and also a slightly longer ability, like shooting duration. So essentially what this means is now instead of having an 8-second absorber, it now has a 10-second absorber. Very good change. Ultimate Ares is not seen that often, so I think it's a pretty good change. So amazing as well. That's that. Ultimate Weapons. I saw the overall changes in this category, and I think, again, most of them are good. However, I do think that the Cryo and the Taron/Redeemer should have also been on here, so big disappointment there. But overall, I'm pretty happy with how they changed the stuff here. So let's move on to the section right now. I'll just breeze through. So first off, the Ultimate Arms. Damage per particle has been nerfed around 20%. This does not matter, guys. What makes the arms broken is not the raw damage, but the percentage damage, okay? And the way that the Ultimate Arms will work is they start out at 1%, level up to like 1.5 and then go to 2.5 or something like that, right? So the ultimate arms percentage damage have not been touched, meaning you will basically see no change whatsoever when you're running them. Yeah, you're not going to see any change whatsoever. They're going to feel the exact same if you own them. Make sure you run them if you do have them, because these are one of the most broken weapons in the game. Ultimate Shredder. Increased damage in exchange for more particle spread. Honestly, considering how all the other weapons have been nerfed, I think that's a fair trade-off. I think that's a pretty expected change. Actually, not even an expected change. I think that it's just nothing changed at all. You're going to feel a little bit more of an... Actually, it'll probably be okay. You'll feel a little bit more of a spread, so you have to be a little bit closer to actually hit your targets now. But besides that, you're getting a little bit more damage. Honestly, pretty good. Ultimate Columbus got a very well-deserved nerf. This damage aside, this is what made it broken. The Columbus would actually get an insane amount of bonus damage for getting multiple hits on the same target. Now that damage bonus is nerfed. However, it does have increased ammo capacity, so don't get me wrong, the Ultimate Columbus's overall damage is going to stay relatively the same. These are the exact stats if you guys want to see. Essentially what it means is now you actually have a chance to like phase shift or dash away instead of just getting melted instantly in like 2 shots. So yeah, Ultimate Columbus, in my opinion, it was deserved, but I think it should have been nerfed harder. So I'm actually going to put it in the okay category. Still a very strong weapon. I personally think that you should get another nerf, but you know what? Considering their ultimate weapons, I guess it's fair game to not nerf them too hard. Moving on, Ultimate Scourge. They got about a 30% damage decrease. They also got a drastic amount of reload interval increase, and their ammo capacity got marginally increased. This is a huge nerf to the Ultimate Scourge. I don't know why they nerfed it that hard, because I don't think that the Scourges were dominating in Champions League that hard anyways. So yeah, honestly, pretty big bummer considering these weapons are expensive. I'm going to put them in the We're Cooked because they basically killed off the Scourge. Yeah, I'm not a fan of that. Pixonic went way too overboard with the nerf on the Ultimate Scourge, in my opinion. All right, moving on to the Ultimate Havoc. Increased damage per particle. Shot interval slightly increased. A bit more horizontal and vertical dispersion, so you have to be closer than 200 meters now to actually be successful. But in exchange, you now have a lot more ammo. Havocs didn't really care about that anyways, considering they had so much ammo capacity and fire rate regardless. So yeah, overall, you're not going to notice any change with the Ultimate Havocs. In fact, if anything, you'll now be able to shoot for longer periods of time. So nothing changed. What a surprise.
Alright, so I couldn't find the exact numbers for the Ultimate Havocs anywhere, so unfortunately I can't calculate the precise damage they deal. Just expect them to still hit really hard, but you'll need to be really close to the enemies now to make them work. Basically, unless you're running Shenlu or Scorpion, you're gonna notice a loss of a lot of damage. Alright, moving on to the Ultimate Hussar Dragoon. These guys got a slightly increased shot interval in exchange for a bit more ammo. So, you guys can see here, this will be the overall damage change. They're still going to be very powerful, and considering how hard the Hussar and Dragoon got nerfed, the ultimate weapons are significantly superior now. So honestly, I probably could have expected a bigger nerf, so they actually went pretty easy on these. So I'm actually going to put the Ultimate Hussar and Ultimate Dragoon in the amazing tier, because considering how hard their counterparts got nerfed, I think the ultimate weapons are still very strong. Ultimate Avenger got a significant damage nerf alongside some spread. This is probably because of the fact that Ultimate Lancelots and Teths have been running this thing to counteract Titans, so I think it's a deserved nerf. I've been seeing the Ultimate Avenger pretty frequently in Champions League, so I think, not even amazing though, but I think it was expected. I was expecting something of a change to happen to the Ultimate Avenger. I'm honestly more surprised they didn't nerf the Ultimate Punisher T as well. And then finally, the Ultimate Vortex got a damage buff, a shot interval, and reload buff. I'm actually very happy about this change because we don't see Ultimate Vortex that often. For anybody who has the Ultimate Vortex, now it's going to be very fun to run. So I'm actually going to put this one as a W Pixonic because they are actually making a relatively weak ultimate weapon to be pretty meta again. So yeah, good change from them. Obviously, you guys probably won't be happy since it is ultimate gear, but let's be honest, if you do have one of these, you probably weren't using it, and now you probably will. So as long as it's making it relevant again, I'd say that's a W change. Also, here's the stats for the UE Vortex in case you were curious. All right, next up we have robots. So overall, I think the robots
some of them, especially like the Samjock, got nerfed pretty hard, so I am very sad. Samjock is annoying, but I do think it's one of the best free-to-play bots you could have invested in. Thankfully, Nuo and Leo did not get touched, so overall, I think the bots could have been better, but I'm not too fond, especially because they didn't touch Ultimate Lancelot, like I said, and Teth is still stupidly strong. So let me go dive more into it for you. So the Teth, the physical shield durability, marginally nerfed. This is a pretty hefty nerf. It now takes more than twice as long for the physical shields to come back. And the ability in exchange got a 2-second shorter cooldown, and Scarabeus got nerfed so that it gives a little bit less physical shield and gives a little bit more damage in exchange for the EMP. Now, you have to realize something. What makes Teth broken is not the physical shields. What makes Teth broken is the force field. It has a 390,000 health force shield that replenishes every 10 seconds, and they didn't touch it. So Teth is still as broken as it is. It'll still be the top tank. Still tops the Rex because of the EMP on teleport, which actually got a buff, by the way, 2 seconds shorter now, so you can cycle it faster. Yeah, I'm pretty sure you can see where this is going. We're cooked. Teth is still the best robot in the game, alongside maybe the Ultimate Lancelot and other Ultimate bots. But yeah, in terms of like raw robot, the Teth is still the best in the game. I'd say Rex is second best. I personally think they should have nerfed the force field. It's probably going to come in a future patch. But yeah, as it is right now, Teth is still the dominating bot. Don't expect Teth spam to die down anytime soon. Oh, you thought it was over? Nope. We're back to feedback from VS, and he agrees that Teth will remain the dominant meta bot. I honestly wouldn't be surprised if it gets another nerf before the official rebalance, because this thing is stupidly hard to kill. He did say that the physical shield is noticeably weaker now, so at least you just need to dish out 1 million damage to kill one instead of 1.5 million. Yeah, I know, a big change. Alright, next up is the Sword. So Sword got a pretty hefty durability nerf, 14%. It got a little bit of a speed buff. The Sword Slash did get nerfed a little bit, but you guys can see here, the ability was a little bit shortened. The execute threshold was nerfed a bit, so 3% lower, so now you have to actually get the target a bit lower to activate your execute. And you're also going to be flying. Oh, actually, it doesn't say anything about flight time being changed. So built-in weapon and damage bonus from the ward doesn't really matter because, let's be honest, a lot of people don't even use ward, they use the Alpo drone. So yeah, essentially Sword got nothing changed to it. In fact, I would actually call it a buff. Because now it can activate its ability a lot faster. The only exception is now you can actually kill it a little bit faster if you have Shield Breaker. So yeah, we'll have to see what other nerfs they do. I don't think they intended it to just be this. Maybe they wanted to nerf the absorber like conversion ratio, but as it is right now, they actually said nothing about that. And in my opinion, they actually buffed the Sword by giving it this increased, decreased cooldown and increased speed. So yeah. Honestly, Sword is going to feel the exact same as it is right now in the live server, so I'm probably going to put it right here in the nothing changed category. So, by the way, this is actually really good because Sword is now in the common pad alongside the arms. If you get them from the common pad, I genuinely think you should invest in them. So yeah, I can't wait to get this thing on my baby account because holy crap, it's going to make the free-to-play speedrun so much fun. VS also agrees and says that while the base damage of the Sword Slash deals next to nothing now, if people shoot at it, which, let's face it, people will, it still deals an insane amount of damage. Again, considering that this awesome bot is now in the common pad, this is an absolute W from picks, and you should build this thing while you can if you manage to get it. Alright, now we're moving on to a very sad day. So the community has mixed feelings about Samjock. I'm actually on the side of Samjock being a very good bot because for free-to-play players, it's very powerful. And yes, it is annoying to fight, but let's be honest, Samjock can carry you the entire game if you play it well. So a little bit of a health increase. The turret damage got significantly nerfed, and it's also going to be firing a lot shorter. Because if you guys see, the turret has 100 ammo, so instead of firing for 15 seconds now, it'll now fire in 12 seconds. I'm not exactly sure what they mean by this. They did say that they're making the auto-aim basically nerfed, but we don't know exactly how much that's going to be. This isn't honestly that concerning. What really concerning is this. Essentially what this means is during phase shift, it is now going to be consuming that fuel twice as fast. So currently, Samjock has a 12-second cooldown, a 7-second ability cooldown, and can stay in phase shift for 6 seconds. What this means is now the phase shift will only be 3 seconds, and on top of that, there's a 10-second cooldown between. So Samjok is literally only going to be able to drop down the turret and run. Not only that, they also nerfed the Chong repair. So currently Chong repairs like, I can't remember, like 20% of your health, I think. And now they're nerfing that to like 5% essentially. So yeah, Chong got a bit of a nerf. That's sad for me because I do run the Chong on my Ravana. But yeah, overall big Samjok nerfs. I guess it's deserved, but personally speaking, considering it's a free-to-play bot, I'm not a huge fan of it. But again, that's my opinion. I guess it was expected, but I'm not the best of fans of it. Alright, so as you guys can see here, VS did comment and say that the Samjok is pretty much dead now. However, I personally think that the Samjok will still be somewhat like good in the meta. You're just going to need to play a lot more hit and run than you do right now. So honestly, I think Samjok will still stay. But I guess we'll have to wait till the live server to see how it officially plays out. Next up is the Condor. So Condor got a bit of a durability increase, bit of a speed increase. Its flight time is now drastically shortened with a longer cooldown. However, now it does heal a bit more, and there is a bit more particle dispersion. So overall, the damage change is this. The ability is going to be shorter. Overall, it's a big nerf to the Condor, but I don't think it's going to be too impactful. Condor, in my opinion, will be slightly nerfed. So I guess it'll be like okay. It's not a big deal in my opinion because Condor is not meta anyways. Alright, so I'm sure some of you guys are flaming me for talking out of my butt right now. In my defense, I was doing estimations in my head while I was first recording this, so give me a break. That aside, Condor's ability was basically killed with damage being cut by more than half. VS tested it himself and he notes that he thinks, just like the Samjok, the Condor is completely dead. I said I disagreed with him on the Samjok, but I'm unfortunately going to have to agree with him for the Condor because, yeah, Pix basically grabbed the Condor by its legs, threw it in a fry pan and boiled it alive, then threw it in the dustbin to add insult to injury. This bot is thoroughly cooked, and I hope Pix reverts these changes before the Rebalance hits because otherwise we're never going to see another Condor in the game ever again. Alright, next up is the Raptor. So Raptor, they actually didn't change anything about the Raptor itself. They actually changed the pilot and the drone. So Gina, which if you guys don't know, is the one who increases your heal. They're decreasing the heal percentage from 15% to 10. And they're also nerfing the EMP duration for Gloria, the EMP pilot, from 5 seconds to 3. So 2 pretty significant nerfs to the Raptor. And they're also making it so that the Hawkeye drone, the damage is nerfed. This is really sad because the Hawkeye drone is good for extermination. It doesn't really do that much damage besides, but all this will really do is it'll nerf extermination clears, and it'll also nerf those Lokis who stay in stealth and just let Hawkeye do all the damage for them. Besides that, nothing really changes. Hawkeye will give a little bit more bonus durability, but 7% to 10%. They make it look big with this 43% increase, but guys, it's a 3% change. Don't get fooled by this big number. It's a 3% change. You're not going to notice anything. So yeah, not that big of a change actually though for Raptor. And I can't say I wasn't surprised to see this. So I'm going to be putting this thing in nothing changed. But yeah, I was expecting something to change like this because we still see Raptor pretty often. So I was expecting those nerfs. All right, moving on to the Ravager. So same thing for the Ravager. They're not nerfing the bot itself, but rather the pilots. They're nerfing the healing on the pilot from 1 to 0.8, so a very marginal nerf. It looks big, but it's actually not that impactful. And they're also decreasing the bonus durability from 15 to 4. This is going to be pretty massive. So if you guys don't know, the Ravager has this thing where you can cycle between stealth. So you can go into stealth, go out of stealth, go into stealth, go out of stealth, multiple times in spawn before you actually start fighting people, and you can get over like 1 million health with it. Now, that strategy will still be somewhat doable, but you won't get anywhere near 1 million health. You'll be getting drastically less. So yeah, pretty big nerf to the pilot. I think it's fair though, because let's be honest, that was a very annoying and not so helpful playstyle regardless. Moderator got a bit of a lockdown duration nerf. I think that's fair because this thing is broken on bots like Crisis and the Ravager, so I think that's a fair nerf. Moderator also got decreased damage bonus per stack, and in exchange they made it so that the stacks have been increased. So instead of going to have a 25% total damage bonus at max stacks, you will now only have an 18%. So it's only a 7% nerf overall, so I don't think it's a big deal. Overall, I think these are decent changes. Ravager, I don't know why they call them the Ravager buff / nerfs, because in reality they're pilot and drone reworks, but yeah. I guess I'll put this as okay. I mean, the Ravager itself didn't change, but it did get nerfed a little bit, so yeah. I don't think it deserved them, because Ravager right now is actually in a pretty good spot, but unfortunate that they did nerf it. So moving on to the Ducks. Surprisingly, they didn't actually do much to change it. So essentially, they made it so that the pilot now only gives a 7% damage bonus instead of 10. 3% difference, not going to be that big of a deal. Webby, the drone, has been nerfed pretty significantly. The slowdown stack limit is now reduced by 2/3, so it only has 5 stacks of slowdown. And not only that, the slowdown effect accumulation that the Webby drone has now has an increased cooldown from 10 to 15. I don't know many people who run the Webby drone still, so I don't know if this will affect the majority of the community. But yeah, essentially big nerfs to the Webby drone, minor nerf to the pilot. Ducks is still the same, so for literally 90% of the population, Ducks is going to feel exactly the same as it is right now. Honestly, Ducks, I'm going to be building this thing in the future for Extermination on my main account, and I still think it's one of the best free-to-play bots because yes, you can get it for free nowadays, although since it did get taken out of the common pad, I guess it's no longer free-to-play? We'll have to wait for it to either come in the workshop or the black market.
Quick interlude, for the Raptor, Ravager, and Ducks, VS also notes that they feel exactly the same, so go figure.
Right, moving on to the Mender. Got a bit of a health increase, got a pretty big increase in movement speed, and marginal increase in defense points. So none of this, okay, so this and this don't really matter. The increased speed bonus is welcome. I don't think it's enough to make Mender, meta per se, but I do think that it makes it so that it's a pretty good buff. I wasn't expecting any buffs or changes to the Mender, so that bonus speed is welcome. And let's be honest, even if it's marginal, these two bonus stats are pretty good.
Alright, so VS notes that the Mender is going to officially be back in the meta again, which I'm all for because I used to run the Mender in my main hanger a few years ago. So W change, Pixonic, W change.
Alright, moving on to the Wayland. I haven't seen a Wayland in literally years, but okay, interesting that they buff it. Let's see if they actually do some impactful changes. Increased healing, 18%, okay. Marginal increase in defense points, this you're not going to feel this. And then you also move... Okay, so you move a lot faster while you're healing your teammates. Okay, interesting. I don't think this is going to be enough to make the Wayland meta. I think they should have increased the numbers by a lot more, so I'm actually going to put this as meh. They might as well have not changed Wayland. This feels like something they added on to make their patch look kind of good compared to the other things that they've added.
VS did mention earlier that some bots were unchanged, with some still being good and some still being bad. Unfortunately for Wayland, I'm pretty sure this is going to be one of the ones that will stay bad. Pigs didn't buff it enough, so I don't think we'll be seeing this guy in the meta anytime soon.
Okay, let's move on to Nightingale. Movement speed increase, increased repair per pulse. Suppression has been nerfed from 75% to 60%, which is pretty bad. And you're also doing less damage per shot. Overall though, you're going to feel like Nightingale hasn't changed. It's going to feel exactly the same as before. So I still think that Nightingale is a decent free-to-play bot, but yeah, the changes, they might as well have not made changes to Nightingale. So here's the Nightingale, basically nothing changed.
Nightingale has always been a solid bot to run in any hanger, and as VS tested it, thankfully it seems Nightingale will still be the same. So congratulations to you Nightingale enjoyers out there, it survived the nerfing phase. If only it also got a buff, but that's for another day. Alright, we're speeding through a lot faster now. Okay, Demeter. Now you can teleport to your teammates a little bit farther. I think that's a very good change. There's a decrease to the ability cooldown, and on top of that, you're also getting more heal. So, very big buff. Demeter, I was already contemplating building on my baby count anyways, which just gives you an idea about how good this thing is. Yeah, I might actually start playing this thing more often on my main account too, because this is essentially going to be saving a lot of your teammates during the Titan phase. So yeah, I think that's a really, really good Demeter buff. I'm actually going to put that thing on amazing tier because I wasn't expecting something like it to happen. All right, so I'm pretty pumped about this one. VS has said Demeter feels amazing to use in battle, so definitely expect to see more of them on the battlefield. If you've got one yourself, get ready to deploy it because this thing just got a massive buff. I recently am almost done finished building one myself, so I'm definitely going to be releasing a video on this once the live server update actually hits.
All right, Fafnir. So increased damage for the built-in weapon, absorber damage. Oh my god. So the conversion ratio, basically when you shoot at the Fafnir shield, now it'll get even more damage when you shoot at it. So now even more so than ever, do not fire into a Fafnir shield. And also, it also got a bit of a decrease in the ability cooldown. This is really big. I don't think it's enough to make the Fafnir meta, but it is a pretty welcome change. So I'm going to be putting that in the amazing tier as well.
Alright, so VS noted that despite the Fafnir buffs, it still basically feels the same to use. Fafnir can still hold its own against the meta if you use it properly, as you guys can see in Predator's videos. So I would say it's still worth investing in if you want to give it a try.
Alright, moving on to the Hawk. You have increased reflected damage and your built-in weapon lasts longer. They might as well have not changed the Hawk. What the Hawk really needs right now is an absorber when it's flying up and an absorber when it's coming down. As long as they don't add that, Hawk will not be meta. So yeah, honestly, kind of a bummer. I'm going to put this one as a meh. Hawk needs a buff, guys. And this is not the buff it needs. So rest in peace, Hawk players, but keep toughing it out. Eventually, I guess, over a lot of patches, Hawk will hopefully return back to a playable point. But right now, it's just not that good. Seraph. Bit of a health increase. A bit of a weapon damage increase for the built-in weapon, and then you're moving slightly faster, you're not going to feel any differences. These numbers are so small that Seraph is going to feel the exact same. So yeah, I'm going to have to put Seraph as nothing changed as well. You're not going to feel any changes to it. Mars. Slightly increased Aegis. Guys, 14,000 health Aegis is not going to do you anything. Turret damage increased by 200 per shot. Also not going to be noticing anything because the turret only really tickles. And also, you get a bonus movement speed. I don't think this is enough to make Mars meta, and these honestly feel more like a joke than they are actual meta changes. So, yeah. Rest in peace, Mars. I am not a fan of that. They could have done so much better. They could have made the turret have a bit more aiming accuracy. They could have made it do drastically more damage or something. I don't know. Make the ability shorter. Add in a new effect. They could have done so many things and they just didn't do it. So pretty sad.
Same as before for Hawk, Seraph, and Mars, these are robots that haven't really changed and are ones I wouldn't personally be running, save for maybe the Seraph. VS tested them all and they haven't changed, so for the most part, don't invest in these bots because there are much better options out there.
Alright, Strix. A bit of an increase in health, increase in speed, this is welcome. And also Prime Sight got drastically increased, so now Strix might actually be viable alongside the Bersagliere. I think that's a pretty good change because I haven't been seeing Strixes that often in my games. So yeah, honestly, pretty amazing change. For a new bot, it's pretty balanced. So I think 3 seconds more ability is a fair buff to give it because I haven't been seeing that often. And I do think that it would be pretty cool to see more of them.
Nothing much more to say here. VS tested it and Strix is apparently more powerful now. So yeah, hopefully we start seeing more of them because I haven't really seen that many of them in games.
All right, so what robot weapons? Overall, I'm pretty satisfied with the changes. I haven't looked too deep into them, so I can't really give too much of a comment here. So let me just go straight into reviewing the weapons. All right, so Hedget, Deshret, and Shent. The overall damage for these weapons are going to be going from this to this. They have less ammo as well, so obviously you're not going to be firing as many. The reload and exchange, though, is a little bit shorter. Sorry, never mind. What am I saying? The ammo and the reload amount are the same thing. They're essentially repeating the same thing twice. So this is literally just a nerf to the damage. I think that's fair because these weapons are ridiculous. They can hit through walls. They can cycle around your robot even when you're not firing them. So fair change. I think that they could be nerfed harder, but you know what? It's a step in the right direction. So I'll put these as an expected tier.
So you guys probably already saw, but I don't think a 20 to 30% damage nerf is going to push these weapons out of the meta. VS himself has said that the strength of these weapons is their burst potential alongside the ability to shoot through walls, so I doubt these things will fall out of the meta until their damage is nerfed again or they lose the ability to wallbang. Unfortunate because these things are annoying as heck to fight against, and when run on the Teth, these things are actually so brain dead.
Arms, I'm actually surprised. Their damage got nerfed significantly and their fire rate did get nerfed alongside their ammo, but the overall percentage damage is going from this to this. So you're only losing out on a very small amount of percentage damage. These are still going to be the best Titan killing weapons. So I'm actually going to put this as an amazing tier, because remember, these weapons are now free to play accessible in the common pad, and they hit still really hard against Titans, So yeah, I think that's a pretty good deal. Arms are going to be good. Invest into a sword with arms if you can get it, and yeah, have fun with it. Alright, so as expected, the arms still do really good against Titans, but as VS notes, the damage is going to be lackluster against normal robots, because as you guys saw from the damage calculations, it did get like a 60% physical damage nerf, so yeah, you won't be able to run these anymore for just like killing regular bots, but for the Titan phase, this thing is going to still be very OP. Gengo, Mogwa, and Kirin, they got 30% damage nerfs all across the board. They fire a little bit faster now in exchange for reloading at half the speed. They also get a little bit more spread, but remember, they don't say anything about the auto aim. So yeah, honestly, in my opinion, I don't think that you're going to feel too big of a difference with them, except for the damage nerf. So I'm going to be putting it, 30% is still pretty significant in terms of damage. So I'm going to be putting these in the OK tier. They are some of the best weapons in the game right now for free-to-play players, so a nerf was expected, but at the same time, 30% feels like overkill. I feel like they could have done half that at 15%, and it still would have been a decent nerf. For those of you that are curious, these are the new numbers, and also now VS says that the weapons actually do run out of ammo, but for the most part are still good and viable, so if you guys have them, then keep running them, and if you haven't been running them yet, then I suggest you do, because Teth is still in the meta, and these weapons hard counter the Teth. Next up is the Howler, Growler, Screamer. These are the damage buffs that they're getting, again, marginal. They're also getting slightly less damage though for subsequent shots. So while this looks like bonus damage, in reality, they're keeping the damage the exact same. And in exchange, you're getting particle dispersion and you're getting a little bit more ammo. But yeah, essentially what this means is the Howler, Growler, Screamer are gonna feel pretty much the same. You're gonna need to get a little bit closer, so you're gonna feel no change pretty much. Alright, so as you guys saw earlier, I couldn't find the exact information anywhere, so unfortunately I don't have any calculations for you. However, VS did test these weapons out, and he did say that they act more like shotguns now instead of precision weapons, so I don't suggest using them anymore unless you're running maybe like close range bots, but at that point, why would you run these weapons when you can instead run like the Havocs, right? So yeah, I don't think these weapons are going to be good anymore, so unfortunate. Hopefully Pix buffs them in the future or undoes these nerfs, because at the moment, these weapons are pretty much going to be just dead. Next up is the Aramis, Porthos, and Athos. You're firing 20% slower, and you're getting a bit more ammo in exchange. So yeah, again, you're not going to feel that big of a difference. I personally think that these are some of the best weapons you can use for free-to-play. So yeah, nothing really changed. The only issue is you can't really get these things through the workshop anymore. You can't get these things through the workshop, and you're only going to be really able to get them through black market chests. But if you manage to get one, it is worth leveling one to Mark II, because they do solid damage. They heal you by a decent amount, and this nerf is not that impactful. Again, the numbers didn't really change, so no really need to do the calculations or anything. But yeah, all you need to know is that they do a little bit less damage, but because they have a larger ammo capacity, VS actually says that they're like a bit more easier to use. So yeah, honestly, if you have these weapons and you have some of them leveled, then use them. If you don't have them leveled, then level them up, because these weapons are going to be about as good as the Redeemers now, I would say, in the next update. Alright, next up is the Regulator. The Regulator got a pretty hefty nerf. Ammo capacity increase is the only buff. Now it has 20% more spread, and also you won't be doing anywhere near as much damage. So obviously you have the 23% nerf here, but also now you're only getting a 10% bonus to your long range shots instead of a 30% bonus, which means for one full clip, now it goes from this much damage right now to this much damage after the test server update hits the live server. So yeah, pretty big change. I'm not a fan because Regulators are already pretty much dead as the way they are. I personally think they should have gotten a buff. And what in the world, why are they adding particle dispersion to everything? Do they want the game to be more luck-based or something? I don't know. In my opinion, Regulator nerf, we're cooked. They're basically just killing this weapon. You're never going to be seeing this weapon ever again. So yeah, very sad. Regulators are still a cool weapon in my opinion, and I feel like they shouldn't be nerfed this hard. All right, not gonna lie, the math kind of fried me, so I used chat to calculate this for me. So as you guys can see, it's about a 30% damage nerf overall. Yeah, and also VS has tested all the sniper weapons, and he says that most of them are dead. So yeah, I wouldn't run sniper weapons anymore, except for the piercers. So yeah, pretty sad day for free-to-play players, but that is what Pixonic has decided to do. Maybe they wanted to make a more close-range meta, I don't know. But it's a sad day if you run sniper bots, you might want to change them out. All right, next up is the Magnetar. They're getting a reload buff and a small damage buff, but if you guys can see here, the ammo capacity is going nerfed by more than half, which means the overall damage that the Magnetar will do goes from this to this. So yeah, Magnetar's got a hefty nerf. I don't know if people were running the Magnetars anyways. So yeah, essentially what this means is you're not going to be seeing the Magnetar that often. So light weapons are going to be kind of cooked. So I think that's enough of a damage nerf to cook it. You might see it still, but I don't think it's worth investing into anymore, considering it's a light weapon too. Like, I think the reason why they're doing this nerf is specifically for that Mark II offer that they sell, where you get a Dagon and like 6 Mark II Magnetars. They didn't like how so many people were getting them, so they just nerfed it. That's my thoughts on it. So really scummy move in my opinion by Pixonic, but yeah, unfortunate. Yeah, so VS also tested these, and he notes that they're pretty much dead as well. So yeah, if you're running the Magnetars, I highly suggest you run something else, because Pixonic has basically killed off these weapons. All right, next up we have the Prismas. Damage bonus for long range shots is getting nerfed by 50%, which means your damage is getting halved. They're also increasing the reload. However, they're increasing your ammo capacity. So yeah, essentially what this means is now your damage goes from this to this, and you're also going to be having a lot more downtime before being able to fire at another target. So yeah, the overall DPS has been nerfed, but I feel like it's fair because these are long range weapons, and let's be honest, Prismas melt things in an instant. So I think it was expected that these things were going to get nerfed, but yeah, it doesn't make it hurt less, but it was expected. So I think that's fair. Although 50% is a pretty big nerf. I think 25% would have been fine. Here's the damage calculation if you're interested. It's a 67% nerf, so yeah, pretty much the weapon is dead. Very unfortunate. I hope Pix doesn't, continue on with these kind of changes, because holy crap, this weapon is pretty much never going to be seeing the light of day ever again now. Reapers. They're getting a 27% nerf in exchange for getting 1 more bullet, and you're also getting a bigger shot delay, which means now you'll be doing this much damage in this much time, in comparison to the live server right now where you do this much damage in this much time. So it's a pretty big nerf for the Reapers. I personally don't think that that was fair, especially because the Reapers still take an eternity to reload. So yeah, Reapers, in my opinion, are going to be going into the meh category. I'm not a fan of the nerf at all. I don't think it's enough to kill it off because the damage output is still high, but let's be honest, it just didn't need to be nerfed that hard. Alright, so as you guys can see here, the Reaper got about a 20% overall cycle DPS nerf, but it now takes twice as long to actually do the damage for the clip. So as VS noted here, pretty much all these sniper weapons are now dead. So yeah, don't run snipers anymore unless it's the Piercer. And yeah, pretty sad day for free-to-play players because these weapons were creatable in the workshop or obtainable in the black market. Trickster and Deceiver, they're more accurate, they have more ammo, nothing about damage, so they're still trash, in other words. We're just never going to see these weapons ever again. They're just dead. Alright, Shatter, Splinter, and Brisant. They're getting more dispersion all across the board, which means they're now having more spread. This basically just means, less spread. They're all negative changes. Okay, so Shatter, Splinter, and Brisant will be more accurate now at the 250 meter range. So you'll probably be able to fight enemies around 200 meters and hit like 90% of your bullets. That's a pretty big buff, actually. I wasn't expecting the shotguns to get buffed like that. So yeah, I'm actually going to put that as a pretty amazing buff. The Shatter family is going to be pretty good now. I guess you can run that on brawlers. Alright, no damage calculations because the damage didn't get changed. VS does note that they do a little bit more damage now at range because the grouping got a little better, but they still are a little bit worse than the blast shotguns. So honestly, run the blast shotguns over these. However, if you don't like the blast shotguns and you have these instead, then it's okay to run these. They'll still do pretty good. We're almost done. Moving on to the drones. Alpo got nerfed pretty hard. I'm not going to give an overview, by the way, because there's only 3 drones here. Yeah, Alpo got a pretty big nerf. Damage from the built-in weapon got nerfed pretty big. There's a lot more spread, so it's going to be a lot less accurate. This is pretty huge. This essentially means you can no longer use it on the Ultimate Griffin. And I think they made that so that, because right now, Ultimate Griffin, like, anytime you see an Ultimate Griffin, you also see the outpo. So every time it jumps and lands, it gets the extra Aegis shield. This essentially, they wanted to kill that off, and they only wanted to make Leo and Nuo be able to use it, because this was the reason why it was such a good drone. You could actually use Bifrost and Frederick to get the cleanse stacks, but now you can only get it from Leo and Nuo buffs. L move by Pixonic, I can't say I wasn't expecting it, but I still think that this is a very bad move. It's meh. I'm still going to be using the Alpo because I run it on my Nuo, but yeah, I'm not a fan of how they made it exclusive to the Leo Nuo. It kind of feels like the Pascal drone when they changed it to be exclusive to the Kiri. Yeah, I hope they revert back that change, at least the cleanse part. All right, Hiroko nerf. I was expecting this one. If you guys don't know, every tank player in Champions League currently runs the Hiroko, because every time you activate the Unstable Conduit, you get 30,000 extra health, and you get 5 defense points on top. So if you activate it 8 times, you get 240,000 health and 40 defense points. Now they're going to be cutting that in half, so instead of 240,000 bonus health, you'll only be getting 120,000. In my opinion, a lot more balanced, and I can't complain because this thing was literally everywhere. And also, they're no longer giving you a permanent damage bonus. You will now have to get the bonus damage from Dot, which doesn't matter because every time you activate a module, you actually get 25 stacks of Dot. So you'll still get a 25% damage bonus for 5 seconds. Still very good drone. And you're also going to be getting a little bit less damage. Do I think they killed Hiroko? No. I actually think that was a very fair balance change. So I'm actually putting it at expected. I don't think it could have been any better or any worse. I think that's perfectly where it was well balanced. All right, now moving on last to the Shy. Shy, you can get up to 5 stacks, I believe, of the defense points. These are the exact stats of how much defense points you would get now, and this is how many defense points you would get after the nerf. Do I think they killed off the Shy? Nope, not at all. And yeah, I still think this is a pretty good change. So I was honestly expecting it because Shy is also one of the popular drones right now. Almost done. Now we're on to the orbital supports, aka the motherships. My current tier list, in my opinion, for the new mothership meta is going to be, first place is going to be the Stealther. Second place is going to be the Bifrost. Third place is going to be Mute. Fourth place will be Frederick. Fifth place Avalon, and then the other ships following behind that. So the reason why is because, as you guys can see here, Frederick did get nerfed. So now instead of getting you a 90% damage bonus, you'll only get 50%. You also only get 70% bonus speed instead of 100%. In exchange, each stack will last a little bit longer. So yeah, that's going to be pretty cool. However, the reason why I say that Frederick is dropping to 4th place is because, not because Frederick's getting nerfed, because Frederick is still going to be a very strong battleship, but because the other 3 on top of it hard counter the Frederick. And we'll get to it in a second. So Frozen Scorn, more damage, less dot, less slowdown. Honestly, not that big of a change. So actually, let me go back here. Frederick, you're not going to notice the change too hard, and I honestly expected it to get nerfed. And then where are we? Frozen Scorn, nothing changed. It's going to be the exact same. Actually, it might actually be weaker, so that'll be a meh change from me here. Avalon, less healing, less cleanse. L move, Pixonic. It's a free battleship. Just leave it be. Leave it be. It's perfect the way it is. You don't need to nerf it. Or buff. Or actually, if anything, you want to buff it. Now, here's the best part. Bifrost. You're getting 2 extra seconds of defense points accumulating, and then you're getting 2 seconds more for hitting the max amount as well. So instead of now having 7 seconds of a last stand, that's unmitigatable, by the way, you will now have 11 seconds. And on top of that, you're also getting 65 defense points per stack instead of 45, which means your overall defense will now go from this to this. Pretty big change, and it means that you'll now be invincible for pretty much 11 seconds once you activate it. And that's also why Frederick's getting nerfed, because Bifrost will just completely hard counter the entirety of Frederick, because you'll just be invincible. So I personally think that's a W change. Bifrost is free to play accessible. You can get it in the free shop. You can get it inside the shipyard inside clans. And yeah, it's now going to be a very, very strong free to play turret. A free to play mothership. Paladin got a bit of a repair nerf, a bit of an Aegis nerf. You're going to basically notice no changes to it. So I personally think that it's in the nothing changed category. Beholder got a slight damage nerf, and also the blast is now applied correctly. I'm not exactly sure what that'll mean for the overall damage, but I guess Beholder will be slightly weaker, so I guess okay. I don't think they had to nerf it, because in my opinion, it's still just a regular battleship, but whatever. Mute. So during its prime, it used to have a 11-second duration. Right now it's 7, so it's not as good. They're bringing it back up to 9, so it's only going to be 2 seconds shorter than its prime time duration, which means Mute is now back into the game. Mute also hard counters the Frederick, because if you use the Mute on somebody who's Frederick boosting, their entire Frederick boost is going to be gone by the time they're unmuted. So yeah, Mute is back in the meta. And I think this was a pretty decent change. It'll be annoying to deal with, but considering that a lot of players now have this thing for free, thanks to either shipyard, from the Hank shipyard events, or from just opening black market chests, I think it's a pretty good deal. Mute is finally back. Titan specializations. Self-fix reactor, you're repairing half of it. I don't think it was used anyways, but regardless, I don't think it was necessary. Titan repair amplifier, you're getting less heal and less gray heal. I think that was expected because this thing is absolutely broken, but you're not going to really notice that much change either way. Ultimate specializations, nothing really changed. I don't think you're going to notice any change if you do have an Ultimate Titan. We can ignore these. They're very minor buffs, and you guys don't have a lot of ultimate gear, but regardless, the numbers are so small. You're getting a 3% increase. You're not going to notice it. Titan Last Stand got a 2-second increase. I think this thing will make the Bjorn even more render than it is, because remember, Bjorn did not get touched at all. So Bjorn will actually be really solid Titan. I think this is an amazing change to make it better for the Bjorn, because realistically speaking, this is only a Bjorn buff because only the Bjorn currently has the Titan Last Stand. And then Titan Immune Amp, you're getting bonus health and bonus movement speed. Again, this is a Bjorn buff, so that's pretty cool. I'm also going to put this one as amazing as well, because Bjorn is a pretty balanced Titan in my opinion. And then finally, we have the robot specializations. Essentially, they just, swapped around the places of the two modules and pretty much kept everything else the same. So actually, Beacon Operator, Beacon Capture bonus is a pretty big buff, and that Robot Accelerator is a pretty big buff. Honestly, it's not nothing changed. That's actually pretty good. Saboteur bots are now going to be ridiculously fast, and you're also going to be capturing beacons at a ridiculous speed. Loki might actually become meta again alongside, the Skyros Ball. So yeah. So that is my official tier list. If you guys want to take a final screenshot or a final look at it, here we go. Kind of hard to see. So yeah, let me see if I can get it to a good spot. Yeah, there we go. So this is the final screenshot. I'm also going to screenshot it myself. So yeah, this is the final tier list. This is an extra Avalanche that I included. So yeah, that is the tier list done, and that is the overall balance changes done. So by the way, if you're wondering what the best ship is and why is it Stealther, it's because Stealther can equip 2 damage enforcer turrets, and also you get 10 seconds of stealth and 15% heal per second. So even if the enemy has Quantum Radar, you're healing 15% health per second. That means if you were to be shot non-stop, you could heal up 150% of your max HP. Even without stealth, you would be unkillable. That is why Stealther, in my opinion, is the best mothership. And if you can get it for free, get it. I doubt it'll get buffed or nerfed anytime soon because it is a new mothership. And yeah, it might actually replace Bifrost and Frederick in the current popular meta. Alright, so once again, you guys can see here the overall rebounds tier list. So remember, this right here is not about how strong the meta is going to be. This is going to be my overall thoughts for the changes in general. Picks Your Goated, of course, are changes that I think are very, very good. I was not expecting Atlas and Void to get nerfed this soon. And yeah, Bifrost got a pretty good buff. Amazing are changes that I thought are either really good or items that I thought would get nerfed harder, but aren't and are now free to play accessible as well. So pretty good changes. Expected are, changes that I thought would happen. Nothing changed is quite literally nothing happened. Okay changes are like, the changes aren't the best, but they're acceptable. Meh changes are like changes you really shouldn't have implemented Pixonic, whereas the we're cooked are the ones that you should not have done at all. I'd either hope you undo those nerfs / buffs or, just buff them better next time. And I actually have a big treat for you guys. So I actually made a second tier list. This one is predicting the meta. So as you guys can see, meta I'm going to define as items that are going to be seen pretty much everywhere in Champions League. Arbiters are still going to stay. I'm going to see a lot more Skyros balls and Lokis thanks to the new beacon and speed bonus for the modules. The Egyptian balls and Teth are still unfortunately going to be meta. Bifrost is now going to see a lot more use as the second best mothership. Only Stealther, which really should be called the Healther, is going to be first place. Atlas is still meta. Sword is still great. Frederick's still great. Honestly, the new Titan Vortexes are going to be OP. And of course, the Bjorn's going to see a lot more play thanks to the Last Stand and Immune Amp buff. Mute's going to come back into the meta. So Shy has always been good and it's going to stay. The nerf wasn't too hard. Same goes for Hiriko and Alpo. Strix did get a good buff, so it's going to be pretty strong now. A Titan Repair Amplifier is still going to be your go-to module. Avalon will be the 5th best battleship in my opinion, only behind Frederick. Gangul, Mogwan, and Kirin are still going to be pretty much everywhere. They didn't get nerfed that hard. And Bersagliere is still used by people in the top 100 as a great counter to the Atlas. So I don't think that's going away anytime soon. And then Ultimate Avenger, the Ultimate Arthur, and pretty much all the rest of the Ultimate items you see there are still really powerful, even with the rebalances. So you'll still see them a lot for the people who have it. And then Void Chasm didn't get nerfed that hard either, so they'll be probably the best Titan brawling weapons for the time being. And then Otto is obviously going to be good because the arms are still meta, and then Ultimate Sword Unit, self-explanatory. Top tier are items that are going to be Champions League worthy, but not, used pretty much by everyone, only by free-to-play players. So Eiffel, Luchador, Mauler, Indra, Rook, the Aether, the Sharanga, these are all Titans that are going to be good for free-to-play players and will still be really good. They're not going to be as powerful as, Titans like Ultimate Titans and the Bersagliere and the Atlas, but they're still going to be able to hold their ground if you play them properly. Same for the weapons, Redeemer, Igniter, Porthos, Athos, Aramis, the Splinter shotguns, all of those weapons, very powerful. They're not going to be used by everyone in Champions League, but you can use them to get into Champions League and hold your own. Paladin, in my opinion, is going to be the 6th best mothership. And then Demeter, honestly, I was considering putting it in meta. I don't think it's going to see as much use though, but I would put this at the top of the meta rankings. So it's pretty powerful. Other bots like Fafnir, Mender, Ravager, Dux are still good and really great to use. The ultimate robots that you see here are slightly weaker than the ones on the meta tier. So these are still good ultimate robots, don't get me wrong, but there won't be as many of them in Champions League as the ones that I mentioned in the meta category. Raptor is still great. Yang Li, despite the nerfs, is still a really good pilot because as you guys see, all the Titans here pretty much use Yang Li. So yeah, still very solid pilot. As for the great category, these are like robots and weapons that are decent and are kind of viable. You guys see the ultimate Grom here because there's no real reason to put the ultimate Groms in meta tier considering the Atlas's void weapons are better. So literally you just use the voids instead of the ultimate Groms. But for everything else here, they're decent. I don't think they're like bad per se, but I don't see many people in Champions League running them anyways, so that's why I put them here. The decent category are going to be weapons and bots that are still going to do well. You'll need to be a lot more careful with them to actually use them properly. The awful category is pretty much self-explanatory. Either the weapons don't feel good to run or the bots are just too weak to actually use. Frozen Scorn pretty much is never seen today anyways, so yeah, pretty much no one uses it. And then the dead category, this is unfortunately the weapons and the robot Condor that are not going to be able to be run in higher leagues anymore because either their damage got nerfed, their reload got nerfed, or they just don't have much to offer compared to the other things in the higher categories. Self-Fix Reactor, which is a Titan module, is pretty useless because, Titan Repair Amplifier gives you pretty much more healing than that thing does, with the benefit of also giving you defense mitigation immunity. So yeah, overall, I think the weapons in the dead category should be buffed. I don't know why Pixonic decided to nerf them either that hard or didn't give them a buff properly. So yeah, that's my overall meta predictions, and hopefully you guys can agree. If you don't agree with me, then leave a comment down below and I will look at your comment and I will either respond to you saying why I agree with your thought or why I disagree. So yeah, thanks for that. And then also real quick, shout out again to VS, my GOAT, for testing all these things on the test server himself. Of course, I can't really show the footage because he just did those tests on his own, but all those tests were very helpful. And again, if you guys check out his Reddit post, he has guides on every single item in the game pretty much. So if you are a free-to-play player or are a player who are looking for tips on how to play things, go check him out. I put the link in the description. And yeah, go show him a lot of love because he is my lovely clan leader and he's an amazing friend. That being said, this is the end of the video now. This video did take over like 20 hours of editing and like a week of time to actually create. The raw footage, it was actually 2 hours long. So yeah, you guys can see here, it was pretty hectic. If you guys liked this kind of video, please let me know. This was really hard to make, so I might not make these too often, but if you guys do want to see them and this video gets like, I don't know, 1,000 likes somehow, then I will be making more videos like these in the future. So yeah, leave a comment if you have any other suggestions or thoughts. And next episode will be episode 3 of the free-to-play speedrun. So look forward to that. I spent way too much editing this, so I'm gonna go sign off now and maybe go relax, read something, I don't know, take a nap. Yeah, I'll see you guys next time. See ya!